WIBF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
McDermott said it's important to get a feel for the speed of the game this time of year.
Mike Danger.
Spirits seem high today. You've got perfect weather, and you have that one last practice here before it gets real, right?
Gene Battaglia.
Normally a lighter practice. That's what I would expect tomorrow here, 2 days out from the first preseason game. So
I think they're a better football team this year than they were last year.
I'm excited about this team.
One more camp day here on campus before the team pulls up stakes, heads back to Buffalo, prepares for their preseason opener Saturday afternoon against the Chicago Bears.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
It is bittersweet. Today's a bittersweet day. You know, we never want to wish away summer. We certainly enjoy the privilege of being at St. John Fisher for Buffalo Bills training camp every day that the team is in town. And, you know, the day comes where that final practice happens, the moving trucks are all packed and ready to go, and the team heads back west to Orchard Park, and another season at Buffalo Bills training camp here in Rochester is over.
yeah, we definitely have an appetite for Major League Sports in Rochester. Just we're not a major market. That's kind of the rub there, right? So when these things come around, when it's a golf major, when it's the Buffalo Bills training camp, I think we do this right, and that was a lot of fun. Today felt like the last day of school, though. It really did. It was just kind of subdued, and the fact that, I mean, you had the moving truck leaving about an hour after it was loaded up, ready to go, heading on back to Orchard Park.
Yep, that's right. And you mentioned practice today. Practice was a little bit more down-tempo. Like, they just took their foot off the gas a little bit. There, no pads, not necessarily a walkthrough, but it felt more like, okay, we're just making sure everybody knows where they need to be, and let's not get anybody injured today at practice as we prepare for Saturday's preseason opener.
No, there were some practices in the heat there where the hitting was real and the tempers were flared. Today was not that at all. I could give you my highlight of practice today, Danger. It gives us something to kind of chew on, but fantastic show we got lined up here for you today.
And before we tell you who's stopping by the sports bar, as we kind of wrap up our coverage of Buffalo Bills training camp, I think a lot of thank yous are in order. I'm eternally grateful for the work that you do, Gino, for the work that our team does around us. I mean, we don't get the opportunity like a lot of, as many people get, to be there, to have the access that we have, to be able to talk to the people that we talk to. We certainly can't do it without the help of our engineer, Derek the Pizza Dude, who is there every morning to get us set up, get us ready to go, get us ready to talk to these players. I certainly want to say a big thank you to Max, who helped us out with video production and making sure that all of our content and our streams were up and rolling, and that we had some good recaps to share with you across all of our platforms. Young Zach, the intern,
Learned a lot, yeah.
Hopefully it was a summer of education, a summer of learning, a lot of experiences. Zach, who had never tried a Reuben in his entire life, didn't know what a Reuben sandwich was until he went to the cafeteria at St. John Fisher during one of the media luncheons. He was like, oh, this isn't bad. I'm like, yeah, that's a Reuben. It's a pretty good sandwich. Get familiar with the Reuben, young Zach. He was fantastic throughout the course of training camp. Of course, the Dan DeLorean spending time here at the studio, keeping us on the air as well. I know I'm forgetting people. Everybody at St. John Fisher, all the volunteers. I mean, stop and talk to the volunteers, talk to Coach, talk to a bunch of the volunteers that are there. Man, it's just good. It's good vibes all around for the 2.5, 3 weeks that we've got training camp here in town. It's fleeting, but man, it feels good. And you know, all these people are a part of what makes it great.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank also, because we can't do it without our sponsors, Maddie's Motorsports, Graham Marcus, fantastic, and they are blowing up. They've got locations now, 3 of them in town. They got 1 in Buffalo, so always great to see a Rochester area business do well. And special thanks to John and Brad and everybody over at Ace Swim helping us out. Facilitated by our guy, Mike Whittemore Productions.
Hey,
so thank you, Whit.
That's our guy.
So, this was a team effort, making it happen. I want to say 3 weeks. 3 weeks it felt like we were out at camp. I know it wasn't technically 3, but we were there for the better part of 3 weeks. We taped some fantastic conversations today, and we've got football tonight.
That's right.
Danger. We've got football Saturday. The Buffalo Bills, of course, taking on the Chicago Bears. And, oh, my gosh, we're going to have the number 1 overall pick playing. We're going to have Josh Allen playing. It's going to – I didn't expect this, but that –
For a quarter of play, it's going to feel like a regular season game at least. That's the hope. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some bugs worked out, but if you had a curiosity to see what Josh Allen looks like this preseason, you'll get your wish on Saturday. And if you had a curiosity to see what the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft looks like in his first NFL action, you'll get your wish in Orchard Park on Saturday as well. Joining us this afternoon to talk about this final practice, to kind of put a bow on training camp, a couple of our favorites. We're talking to Joe Buscaglia from The Athletic. Joe B stops by in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yeah, Joe is good when it comes to X and O's. I value his opinion, and there's a lot to talk about in the secondary. Namely, hey, Damar Hamlin, are we there yet for him as a starter? Because entering camp, I put my hand up in the air. I'm like, I don't know if he makes this team. Well, he's on the team. But now can we value him as a starter? Because, well, Cole Bishop is hurt, and Mike Edwards is hurt, and you don't know when those two guys are actually going to be coming back. Also, Kyer Elam. That's an interesting topic. Like, how much time will we see? Is there really going to be a rotation? So much to talk to. Of course, the wide receivers, too. Joe Buscaglia from The Athletic coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yeah, Joe B's take on Tyrell Shavers is one that you might be surprised by. We'll get to that coming up here in the 4 o'clock hour. And joining us later this hour, one of our favorites from 13 Wham Sports and BuffaloPlus.com, Jenna Cottrell stops by the sports bar.
Jenna Cottrell comes by today on the day where MVS reminds everybody, okay, this is why I'm here.
Yes, he also had a drop a couple of plays later. So, right, I mean, with the good comes the bad, I think, with MVS. And, boy, that's the debate, right? And you know, Jenna and Mike and Dan over at 13, they're all – Dan's got the take that MVS is going to lead the Buffalo Bills in receiving yards this year.
I think that's crazy.
There's a lot of people that think that's crazy, including Dan's coworkers, including Jenna, who will be stopping by. And look, MVS had a nice catch today, and he also had a ball that you see it and you're like, might want to come up with that one. I don't know if I mean,
it wasn't just back up. It wasn't just a nice catch. That was the starting secondary, which he got a clear 2 steps.
Yeah, he got behind.
Okay, who else? Who else in this defense do you trust to do that? You know, put my finger quote here. Take the top off the defense.
Yeah.
Is it Curtis Samuel? It's not Keon Coleman. It's not Khalil Shakir. It's not Dawson Knox. KJ Hamler is dinged.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Bills decide to do. And I think you have some roster gymnastics ahead for the Buffalo Bills as well. And a couple of injuries here that might land players on IR to start the season, freeing up a couple of roster spots.
Yeah, IR, PUP. There's a few ways you can kind of go with this here. As the list was long today in terms of the players not participating. And hey, if you're not practicing 2 days ahead of the game, chances are you're not going to be playing the game on Saturday. Jenna Cottrell, 13 Wham Buffalo Plus, coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Now, Sean McDermott spoke this morning before practice to kind of lay out, some final notes and preparations for Saturday's preseason opener. We wanted to make sure you had that information as well. That press conference from earlier today, we'll get that to you here in less than an hour.
Well, I'm going to bullet point it for you here.
Sure.
Because this wasn't your typical McDermott, okay, I'm going to just talk night. I think there were actually 3 things you can pull out of this. One, which, okay, your lead story, I suppose, it actually made it on ESPN.com as a lead. Hey, Josh Allen's going to play along with the first string. Okay, we can kind of debate that. It's the evergreen, age-old topic. What do you do with your players preseason and don't get hurt, right? Or do you need them to get some work? Well, they need a little work in the eyes of the coaching staff. So that's headline number 1. Headline number 2, Mike Danger, and this has been – understand that sometimes writers are assigned to do stories, and somebody was assigned to do a story this week to talk to the coaches and everybody else, Josh Allen. Hey, the receiving core, how's this going to be different from Steph Diggs? You got to mention the word Steph Diggs in there.
Makes a lot of fans big mad.
it's so divisive, right? Like, we just say the name Diggs. Can we just acknowledge this is actually a guy with a lot of talent that's no longer on the team?
And it's not going away. At least if it goes away, it will reemerge when they play them in Week 5. It will be the storyline of Week 5.
Yes. And what I think Sean McDermott did today, and I don't know if he did this intentionally or accidentally or if he even cares, but he gave just enough for a bulletin board quote for Steph Diggs. If I'm Steph Diggs, I'm taking that to heart.
Yeah. Ultra competitive guys will take pretty much anything that you say that could be even a veiled attempt at a slight to heart. They'll use that as motivation. And McDermott essentially saying that he liked the
unselfish nature.
The unselfish nature of the wide receiver room this year at camp.
Oh, okay. So
what's missing?
Is he talking about Gabe Davis?
Yeah.
Is he talking about Trent Sherfield?
It's a power move. I don't know that it was necessary, but it comes a day after Josh Allen was asked about Diggs and said, when asked, do you miss him? He said, I don't know that I miss him, but then he kind of circled back and said, well, it'd be hard not to miss that kind of production. So Josh Allen does not miss having Steph Diggs around. That much is clear, right? Like, we can say that even though he answered it in a political way and kind of backtrack a little bit, his initial reaction was like, I don't know that I could say I miss him. Like, he doesn't miss having a guy chirping in his ear saying, don't forget to feed me no matter what. Feed me, feed me, feed me. If that was indeed what was happening, and we have every reason to believe, like, there was that pressure to find Diggs before you find anybody else. And those guys on the field, you would have never really known that there was any sort of issue, but I'm sure off the field, they weren't really the same dude. You've got a golden retriever and you've got a pit bull, right? You've got a guy who's an ultra competitor who wants to win at all costs. Not that Josh doesn't, but he does it in a different way. He's more concerned. He's not more concerned. He's just concerned with his likability. He's going to be a guy that you respect, but also a guy that you can.
Two different ways of leading.
Right. I don't know that one's better than the other.
You can't have two alphas, though. Who's the alpha?
That's right.
That was, and that's what we have revisited here in the last few days. And like you said, when we get to Houston week, that's all we're going to be hearing about. Here's headline number 3. And I was so excited. You were doing your hit today, your appearance on WCMF during camp. And by the way, thank you for doing that with the Guys Danger. I was over at the McDermott press conference. Listen to this. I run back, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, I can't wait to tell Danger this. And I'll tell everybody this. And I'm going to give you the question, and then I'm going to tell you what McDermott said. Okay, the question was by Catherine Fitzgerald from the Buffalo News. Hey, who is the veteran or rookie that has impressed you the most in this camp? Very straightforward question. Now, I'm thinking in my mind, Danger, I've heard McDermott enough. I'm thinking he is not going to take this opportunity to highlight somebody because, well, there's a lot of names he could say, right? So he begins by saying, well, I'm going to give you a cop-out answer. I'm like, sure enough. And he's talking about the units, blah, 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 blah. And then he pauses. Now, he's going to mention 2 names here, 2. Who would be one of the most unlikely names you would say, that whether it's a veteran or a rookie that had a good camp? He says Tyler Bass.
Oh, the kicker.
Tyler Bass, who didn't have a good scrimmage at the blue and the red, who missed kicks the day before, hasn't had it. We had Matt Perino. It's like, it doesn't look the same here. And oh, by the way, let's go back to the last playoff game. Do I need to read? What is going on here? What's going on here? It just seems like, well, McDermott gets this question in his mind. Hey, it's an opportunity to give one of my players a little bit of a confidence shot. For all those years listening to Don Granato talk about how great Rasmus Dahlin was, give me a break. Rasmus Dahlin's making mistakes. What are we doing? Oh, he's pumping the tires.
Yeah, he's building up the confidence. Sure. And so much of their performance, any athlete's performance, stems from having confidence. Now, if you're going to have confidence and you're going to talk, you got to back it up. See Noah Lyles and see Sha'Carri Richardson from the Olympics. You have a guy in Bass who it was automatic from the moment he entered the league. Something happened last year, and maybe part of it was what was going on around the team, was what was going on in the locker room, or it was just that lack of confidence that you need to hear it from somebody else. you could be one of the best kickers in the league. You could look around and you could see, a Harrison Butker. You could see a Justin Tucker, and you could be that guy for the Buffalo Bills if you are automatic, if you are consistent. And he needs to get back on that pathway. He veered off of it last year and became a little less than reliable for the Buffalo Bills. So I see what he did there. I don't really have a problem with him doing that. The second one is, all right, now we're just pouring it on. I mean, Tyrell Shavers, he might make the team. Okay, let's say Tyrell Shavers makes the team and they carry 6 wide receivers. And he makes the team because he's versatile and he can play any position you put on offense and he can play special teams, and there are other guys that can't contribute the way Shavers can contribute. But if he doesn't make the team, is there a team out there that's going to say, ooh, Shavers is out there, we got to get Shavers, that's the guy that we need? I don't think there is.
No.
I don't think there is.
No, Danger. If you are going to scour the waiver wire for a 5th one, you're looking at ceilings or guys that can help you week 1. Ceiling, that's in the eye of the beholder with Shavers, and he's not going to help you week 1.
I think the coach likes him because he works hard. I think the coach likes him because he's been doing it the right way. Whatever you ask him to do, he'll do it. He's to the Bills' offense and special teams what Cam Lewis is to the defense, right? He's a guy that, where do you want me? I'm there. What do you want me to do? I'll do it.
Right. So the way I look at this, and injuries are going to play a big part, I think. Who's ready week 1 and shaping that final 53? But Tyrell Shavers is the guy, Danger, that is the perfect practice squad guy that, hey, we're going to keep you down here. Maybe we elevate you for a few games here, and God forbid there's some sort of injury, well, then you'll be the first one we'll promote.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I still have a hard time seeing him making the final 53. Hey, look, there's 3 preseason games, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot of Tyrell Shavers.
What are we talking about ultimately? The 5th wide receiver?
Yeah.
Put this in fantasy terms. You're not going anywhere near the 5th wide receiver. What is the 5th wide receiver to anybody? This Bills team, especially, it's going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to see Dawson Knox, the forgotten guy. So pretty much on the field, you're going to have Knox and Kincaid, and you're going to have Keon Coleman, and the opposite side, Shakir. And then Curtis Samuel will rotate around here every once in a while. And right. So where are we talking about here? Mac Hollins is on this team. He's your special teams guy. I don't see a spot for Shakir, but I see the head coach.
For Shavers.
I'm sorry, for Shavers, yeah.
Shakir's on the team.
Shakir's the leading receiver on this team.
He's on the team.
Okay.
Breaking news in the sports bar. I also, as camp concludes.
Ow! 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 It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
I can feel comfortable in saying Josh Allen won the quarterback competition at Buffalo Bills training camp. He'll be your starter this year with Mitchell Trubisky backing him up. There was a 4th headline from the McDermott press conference that you didn't mention.
Okay.
Bobby Babich will be calling the defensive plays come Saturday.
That's true.
That was the big question throughout the course of the spring. Who's calling plays? Who's calling plays? And Sean McDermott saying, I'm not going to tell you who's calling plays. Let me evaluate. And all along probably knew, hey, if we're going to keep Bobby Babich, a guy who had opportunity elsewhere to go be the dude, to go be a defensive coordinator, then yeah, we're probably going to have to give him that responsibility here as well.
It's strange, though, how he's treating Bobby Babich like any other player. Like, okay, well, he's going to do it this week. Well, what about after? Well, we'll see.
I don't know if I. Yeah.
No, it don't work that way.
I don't think it
doesn't work that way.
I don't think it's a week by week thing.
No,
I do think that if Sean McDermott doesn't like what he sees, that he will take control and he will do it his way. I do believe that, but I think it's Bobby Babich's job as the defensive coordinator now to be the defensive play caller.
Yeah, in kind of in that conversation, McDermott, this camp was actually spending more time with the offense. Mm-hmm. Why? Well, he's got to give Bobby Babich some breathing room. He's got to make it kind of like you are the guy and just not hover.
This is your defense.
Right.
It's in scheme, it's my defense, but it's your defense now. These are your guys.
I'm going to give listen, I'm very critical on McDermott. I think our show is fair in our criticisms on McDermott, but you got to give him credit on this one. He's managing this.
That's the way he should.
Yeah.
He's the president. You've got people, you've got your cabinet underneath you. You have to manage them and make sure that they're doing it the way you want to do it. And I think McDermott at camp this year, I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me, he seemed more loose, maybe a little less guarded. And maybe he's just comfortable in his role now, or comfortable in his position, knows that he's in a good spot with this team. But I think a lot of it has to do with these are his guys. He's got his guys. There, I don't feel like there isn't an agenda at play. There isn't a scapegoat really lined up, or somebody that you can fall back on. I mean, like, and the roster, the guys that he has here are. I mean, think of a room full of Cam Lewises. Like, I feel like that's what you have. Like, what do you need, coach? Wherever you need me, I'm here. I'm a football player. I'll go wherever you want me to go. I think there's a handful of guys that maybe aren't exactly that, but I think for the most part, that's what you have with this roster. There is the trade-off there is that there is, I believe, less talent on this roster than what you had last year.
I think that's fair. How could there not? Like, Poyer and Hyde, also you have certainly Mitch Morse not here, Davis and Diggs right at the top of the list, and let's not forget about Tre'Davious White. But as you'll hear in our conversation with Joe Biscaglia, that's kind of what made this camp interesting, right? A lot of these younger players, and that's why Saturday is really interesting too. Here's also something we should kind of just mention. It hasn't worked. This hasn't gotten you to where you need to. So is it the coaches? Is it the players? Something had to change. And when you look at the salary cap, which is a real thing, hey, I would say this was the time to kind of retool here in 2024.
I'll tell you what, Gino, if they're a 10 or 11 win team with the amount of dead cap that they're carrying this year, that's an impressive job by Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott to do that with. When you got one hand tied behind your back like that, I think if that's what this team ultimately is, then Beane and McDermott have done their jobs. And
this is still a playoff team. Can we just nod?
And if it doesn't work, if they're not a playoff team, if they're not a 10 or 11 point lead, maybe that's the scapegoat. Hey, we kind of knew going into this season, not a rebuild, but we definitely had turnover.
Okay, so timeout. This is interesting. If they don't make the playoffs, okay, well, I'm going to put the injury aside because, okay, sure. Like, if something happens.
Injuries happen.
Yeah. I'm not saying injuries. Let's assuming everybody's healthy. They don't make the postseason. The answer is why. I don't see Josh Allen at this point taking a step back. What if these receivers are just. I think if Josh Allen, the hope is that Josh Allen can elevate the play of Curtis Samuel, of, Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins. I mean, these are not guys that are wide receiver, your typical wide receiver one on an NFL roster. But can he elevate their play? Can he deliver the ball in a place where they're able to be productive? That's the hope. And maybe the scapegoat, if it goes poorly, is, look at all that dead cap we were carrying. We knew that this was going to be a year where we needed to retool, and next year is the year where they say, all right, we recognize that we were short on talent. Let's go back out and invest in talent. It's not like they haven't done it before. They invested in Von Miller. They invested in Steph Diggs. They invested in really, really talented players. I'm going to give you my answer here, too. I mean, we can't skate by the safeties here. That is a concern. Okay, that is a real concern that you're right now down to two guys. And I know you're the safe. I wouldn't put either one of them out there. Like, you get one more injury at safety, what are you doing at this point? It's like you don't have all this reserve there. You can go out and, buy somebody here. That's not going to happen here in August. And then the pass rush, too. So if you couple those two things together and you're losing high-scoring games.
Yeah.
Oh, and Matt Milano, too. Are we 100% sure? Are we sure he's back?
We need to see it.
Yeah.
We need to see it. I think in practice, at camp, there were moments where you're like, okay, he looks good. I also think there are times when you're watching a player at practice or at camp where it's hard not to look good. It's really hard not to look like your old self. when we saw Trey White and Von Miller rehabbing the last couple of seasons. It was like, no, they look good. They look ready to go. They weren't ready to go. They clearly weren't ready to go. So even if what we don't know is mentally what is going on between the ears of Matt Milano. And part of that is we never hear from Matt Milano. The guy never speaks.
Which I'm fine with. No, it's funny. Like, why doesn't he speak? Because he doesn't like to. It's fine.
He's a football guy.
It's fine, yeah.
He's a straight-up football guy. We had a conversation with 13 Wham Sports and BuffaloPlus.com's Jenna Cottrell right after practice earlier today from St. John Fisher University. We want to make sure we get that to you next. Also, Sean McDermott spoke with the media before today's practice. That media session is coming up for you just after 4 o'clock. Our conversation with Joe Buscaglia of The Athletic will be coming up in the 4 o'clock hour as well. We have time for your calls throughout the course of the afternoon. You can fire away and ask us anything about Buffalo Bills training camp now that it's closed up shop for another season here in Rochester. 866-4FAN is our phone number, 585-866-4326. And thanks for watching along on our stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheFanRochester, our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, and engaging with us on X. That's Elon's Twitter, X, at The Fan Rochester. More next in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
update.
Bills heading back to Buffalo. The St. John Fisher portion of training camp has broken. Josh Allen and the starters will see about a quarter worth of action, and the Bills take on the Bears on Saturday. Sean McDermott also wants to see more out of his kicking game.
You know, opportunities that we can in preseason for both Sam and T-Bass will be important for us. So, I mean, you may see on some fourth downs, I decided not to go for it where I normally would, just to continue to get those guys valuable reps and time on task. And so I've been overall very pleased with the day-to-day effort.
Jenna Cottrell, 13 WHAM and Buffalo Plus, joining us next in the Sports Bar. At the Olympics, Serbia is leading the United States in men's basketball. They're in the second. 39-25 is the score. Rochester Red Wings tonight playing in Buffalo. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome back in the Sports Bar, Danger and Battaglia. We're live from St. John Fisher University, the final day of Buffalo Bills training camp, Gino.
Yeah, as it's bittersweet. But we're happy to be joined by Jenna Cottrell, 13 WHAM Buffalo Plus, and it's good to have a member of the Rochester media on with us here because it's a different perspective seeing those moving vans, and our moment in the sun is coming to an end here.
I know, it's true. It's crazy also how quickly they do pack up after camp, but I love this part of the season, especially as someone who lives in Rochester. It's so cool to see this city, this area get some shine, and I know all the players talk about how much they enjoy being here too. Like, we talked to Connor McGovern after practice today, and he was just speaking about this is such a unique opportunity, and I think it's why the Bills have been coming back here for 2+ decades, is the opportunity to have everyone kind of without the distractions that they have in Orchard Park. They all have families, or, you know, it's easy to get caught up with everything. Whereas here, it's like you're hanging out in the dorms, you're walking to the chow hall together, you're kind of all in the same place. And I think especially for this team with so many new faces, it's important every year, but this year in particular, because of how much newness there has been, it's a great chance. I think the Bills had a lot of fun here. I think they're ready to go. I think they're ready and excited to be back in their own beds, all that stuff I get. The older I get, I'm like, yeah, I miss my bed when I do leave. But I think it's great, and I always love it for this area too.
So, Jenna, before we talk about what we see on the field, on the practice field, and what we're looking forward to seeing on Saturday, in the last 24 hours, there's been a little bit of this undercurrent of what the Bills were last year with Stephon Diggs on this roster. Josh was asked about it yesterday. McDermott today, I mean, you could view it as maybe a slight on Diggs, saying that he likes how unselfish the current wide receiver room is. It just feels different around the team. Do you get that same sense?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I did hear McDermott say, you know, the unselfishness of that wide receiver group. And my ears kind of went out a little bit of like, oh, you know, that's something that is such a big part of, I think, the identity of which he wants this team to be. And I think even when Josh Allen was asked on, what day is it, Thursday? On Wednesday, when it was, you know, do you miss Stephon Diggs? And he was like, well, I don't know if I would say miss. You know, you miss their production. I think that is... you know, it's a different vibe this year. It really is. And you might see tweets online about that being the case. And I'm like, it really does feel that way because there's so many players that are looking to Buffalo and looking for this opportunity to have Josh Allen throwing the ball and know what that could do for their career as well. So I think that, you know, undoubtedly Stephon Diggs is an incredibly talented player who has put up huge numbers, and what he has added to the Bills and now what he expects to be adding to Houston. But I think it fits more the identity of this team, of it being, and we've heard Joe Brady say this all camp, of like everybody's going to eat. And I think that I really am starting to see that come into fruition, especially with some of the different skill sets you see from some of the guys. So it's weird. It's like so many fans are like, stop talking about Stephon Diggs. And I get it. And I'm also like, this is going to be a thing, especially they play week 5.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a part of this season. So we'll just see how the Bills do, because you all know how narratives work, because if the Bills are struggling offensively, it's going to be like, I can't believe they traded away Diggs.
Correct.
This is not a story if the Bills offense can be productive and put up drives and put up numbers, all that stuff, but that could always happen. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see it all play out, but I think for this team this year, it really has been a reset and one that I think that they've needed. And even salary cap wise, this year has looked a little bit different. So it's been fun to cover.
Yeah, staying with the receivers, Jenna Cottrell, by the way, our guest, 13-win Buffalo Plus. The play of the day, I think, for practice today was seeing MVS get behind the first-string secondary.
Hold on, that's Bill's leading wide receiver, MVS.
I was about to say, I know. The one day I was coming on here, and Dan Fates, my lovely coworker, my best friend, has said that MVS is going to be leading the Bills in yards this season. And Mike and I were like, Mike Catalan and I are like, okay, whatever, Dan. Another scalding hot Dan Fates take. But today I was like, all days for him to make his best catch. I got to come on here after. But no. MVS had a beautiful catch. It really was. And he was someone that going into camp, I was like, all right, we'll see. Obviously, his resume speaks for itself. 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs. But he's obviously had drops in his career at really untimely moments. And
he also had a drop in practice today, too.
I was about to say.
Happen.
So the first week of camp, I was like, oh, my God, my take looks so much better. Mike's take looks so much better. But he did look good today. But you're right, he did have a drop after that. So I think you see the ceiling. Like, the ceiling's there. We see that. But can he be consistent enough for what this team needs? That will be something that will be played out throughout the year.
I just view guys like him as more of what they had versus more of what they want in the future. And I think that's guys who can catch the ball, guys that have a high catch rate, whether you're talking about Shakir or Dalton Kincaid. I imagine Mac Hollins fits that profile more so than what we got out of Gabe Davis last year.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that MVS is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a wide receiver, your job is to catch the ball.
Correct.
And so if you're not doing that, then that is a huge issue. But you talk about those other guys. I think I've honestly been really impressed by Mac Hollins. I kind of thought when they signed him, I'm like, cool, like veteran guy, special teams presence. That's all great. What can he actually do on the for this offense? But I have been really pleasantly surprised by his hands. Also, if you talk about Mac Hollins, you have to talk about the juice that he brings. Like, he is someone that going into this season, I was worried because at practice, Stephon Diggs every day was pushing everyone to be the best. Hey, you need to do this better. Hey, we got to do this, all this stuff. And I wanted to see who would kind of take from that group, who would take over that role, because that is really important. It's very easy for things to get mundane. It's their job. Like, don't get me wrong. They love it, but we've all been there where you're like, I don't really feel like working today. Don't tell Mike or Dan. Or 13-win. But I think Mac has added that element, and then also I've just been surprised because I think he has been more of a piece than I was expecting, and he's shown up in the moments where he's been asked to. So he's been someone that I honestly, not to say wrote off, but wasn't expecting to see as much of him, but have been impressed by what I have seen.
Yeah, Jenna, there was one answer in McDermott's press conference where my antenna went up this morning, and it was a question of who has impressed you, veteran or rookie? And then McDermott begins the answer saying, I'm going to give you a cop-out answer. I'm like, okay, he's not going to answer this. Let's move on. And then he did give a name, and my jaw dropped. Tyler Bass?
Yeah, that was pretty surprising to me, and obviously to you all as well, because that is someone that, we asked at the end of last season, like, do the Bills have a kicking problem? And then obviously how things played out against the Chiefs, that kick. And throughout camp, he has looked, I think, I don't want to say shaky, but also he's missed some kicks. I feel like they've paid him so much money. And he has been automatic. I mean, I feel like in years past, he'd be like, Bass is out there, count the 3. All right, the Bills are able to, get ready for the next drive. But this season, it hasn't looked how it has in the past. And that is something, him saying that, McDermott today, I felt like he was kind of trying to, pump up his guys' tires of like, hey, man, you got this, all this stuff.
Yeah, and actually, now if I'm looking ahead to Chicago on Saturday, that's a storyline, right? He's got, if he makes his kicks, no problem, we move on. This is a story next week if he doesn't.
1,000%. And we were talking about it on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel of, like, when do they bring in a guy for competition, or what do they do? And Mike Catalana was talking about the fact of, it would have to go really wrong, I think, for this team because of how much money they have, how much they have invested in Bass. But we know that this league, especially in kickers, there's a lot of veteran guys if the job is not getting done. I am curious because that will absolutely be something on Saturday. I want to see how the ones look. I want to see how, Connor McGovern is snapping the ball for Josh Allen. I want to see how the wide receivers look. I also want to see how Tyler Bass is kicking on Saturday, and that will be something that's a point of emphasis for this team going forward.
We're spending a lot of time at camp talking about the safety position because of the injuries at the position and the additions to the position and the lack of additions to the position as well. There's a lot here to unpack. One, I'm wondering what your take is on Damar Hamlin. Clearly, they would prefer he to be a third-string safety. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted Cole Bishop in the second round. Cole Bishop is injured. Edwards is injured. You bring in a couple of free agent guys here as camp bodies, but we'll see what they can do in the preseason as they kind of learn and grow. I'm curious as to the roster gymnastics that you think might happen here over the course of the preseason and whether or not we see them maybe, is Edwards an IR candidate to start the season to open up an extra roster spot? How severe is this Cole Bishop week to week? Shoulder injury? What do you think this, for the preseason, I think us seeing Hamlin out there with Taylor Rapp, I think we'll be okay with.
Yeah.
But what do you think this all looks like come week 1?
I think it really is pinpointed on what the injuries are for Mike Edwards. And that's someone who, when the Bills signed him, they expected for him to be the guy starting alongside Taylor Rapp. And for him to miss the spring with an injury, have another injury crop up during camp, it has really been, I think, just such a huge loss for this team because we know how important that position group is in particular to a Sean McDermott defense. Now, that being said, I have a lot of faith in McDermott and the way he is able to coach up the guys in the secondary and everything that he can do there. But Damar Hamlin is an interesting look because, talking about him coming into the spring, I was like, does he make this roster?
Right.
Realistically, I don't know. But throughout camp, he has been very consistent and he has been making plays. And I think that's someone that I actually really am looking forward to seeing also on Saturday or what that looks like when he is in the preseason because right now, Bishop is hurt. Edwards is hurt. Maybe they do move him to IR for Edwards to, like you said, free up a roster spot. But I don't know if I've given enough credit to Damar Hamlin. I want to see.
I think we're all guilty of discrediting him a little bit.
Honestly, there are guys that we write off, myself, absolutely included. Kyer Elam is another example of a guy that I was like, okay, we'll see what he can do this season. But for Damar, I want to see how the rest of the summer plays out because I've discredited him, and I think that he is. I mean, when he filled in before, I think, and that was obviously when he was a younger player, all this stuff. So I'm more encouraged at the position group than I think a lot of other people because I just think I've seen Damar grow so much on the field. And so I'm curious to see how it will play out because I have been wrong before. But that is someone that I think I'm excited for him to get the chance more.
Jenna Cottrell, 13-win Buffalo Plus. Sean McDermott mentioning this morning offensive starters. We'll see about a quarter roughly. I'm not worried about Josh Allen. Not really worried about the offensive line. I am curious to see James Cook. Not a good practice yesterday for James Cook. What's your worry level about ball security there?
Oh, my gosh. It's funny because we were talking yesterday, once again on the Buffalo Plus channel, about we've talked so much about how it is a concern. Ball security is a concern with James Cook. And I'm like, is it now past a concern? Because we have seen this issue of him fumbling the ball throughout the regular season. Obviously, the Bills at one point benching him because of everything. And then in this training camp, I was like, you know what? He's another year older. I think it's important, the maturation process maybe isn't something overnight. But, I mean, the fumble yesterday, did he fumble again in the end zone? It was so close. It's you need to have that. And that is, level one of being on the football field is you got to take care of the football. So I do feel concerned, definitely. And that is huge. So will he be able to grow? We'll see. Mike Catalana used to do the pregame show with Fred Jackson, and Fred Jackson had always talked about how you don't want to be on the other team's bulletin board as a guy of hey, this guy will give up the ball. And I worry that is James Cook right now. So how does he amend that? I don't know, because he's had time in this league. So that is definitely something. Ray Davis did have a couple fumbles early on, their draft pick. I think for him, I've liked him. He's been really good in blitz pickup, too, which I've been impressed by. I love Ty Johnson, too. I think I am more up on Ty Johnson, but obviously the injury hurts. So James Cook is someone that Yeah, I have concerns, definitely, for sure.
Now, we talked a little bit about MVS earlier with Jenna Cottrell, 13 Wham Sports, BuffaloPlus.com. Let's talk about the rest of the wide receiver competition, because I think that's the one that's gotten the most attention throughout the course of camp. And, we could discuss whether or not MVS has done enough during camp. We know that we haven't seen much of Chase Claypool dealing with that toe injury, and he can't get on the field. The name that keeps getting brought up, that's become like the camp darling, because you heard Sean McDermott mention him again today, is Tyrell Shavers. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling with Tyrell Shavers making this team. I struggle with him being more than a practice squad player. What say you?
I hear what you're saying completely, because I think of last year, Andy Isabella was the training camp darling, and it's like it's really hard for those guys to make the roster, and obviously he was a practice squad guy. I think Tyrell Shavers, I've never heard really McDermott talk about a player quite with the high regard that he has for Shavers, with a guy that doesn't have the resume of other players, if that makes sense. The other experience that other players have. I think Tyrell Shavers is a guy coming into camp that, I honestly, we get the roster cards, and I'm like, oh, Tyrell Shavers, yeah. But I wasn't I was honestly looking more towards Justin Shorter and what he would be. But I think he really has stolen the attention, and it's because he's been so consistent, and it's because he's been able to not just have one good day. He's been able to stack good days. So for this team, McDermott talked about it today. They love competition, all that stuff, and I feel like this team is more willing to reward that than maybe other teams right now, because the situation at wide receiver is so fluid. But I hear you, because you're like, Tyrell Shavers making the roster, all this stuff. But then you get into the dynamic of, cutting a player, bringing him back on the practice squad. Does he have to pass waivers? Whereas like a Chase Claypool, if you cut him, he would just be a free agent. You could possibly re-sign him. So there's a lot of – Brandon Beane's job is going to be hard. But I think that Tyrell Shavers has done as much as he can to prove that he deserves to be on the roster way more than I ever expected.
Jenna, last one for me, and it's about Saturday, and usually preseason game, okay, we'll evaluate the Bills. I'm actually curious to see Caleb Williams and this Bears offense and what they do or don't do against this Bills defense. Your thoughts on what we're going to see Saturday?
I'm really excited for that, because I think Caleb Williams, Ryan Poles, their GM, obviously from our area, using Caleb Williams, the first overall pick, all that stuff. I think, look, I'm rooting for a guy, but I think for Caleb Williams, we've talked so much about him, and he's like a little bit quirky, and I love that. So I want to see what he can do. It's preseason, so,
Yeah.
But I think it'll be way more. Look, usually preseason games, you're like, bubble wrap everyone, just get to the other side and be healthy. I want that, and also I am excited to see what the on-field product looks like, which you can't always say about summer games.
It's also a little bit about the coverage you got coming up here leading up to week one, and everything you've got going on at BuffaloPlus.com, Jenna.
Yeah, so we do a bunch. We do daily recaps of what went down at practice. You can find that on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. We also have an audio podcast, because, if you are out and you don't want to have your video rolling, you can check out the Buffalo Plus, creative name, I know. The audio podcast, you can find that wherever you listen to your podcasts. We have a fun story coming up. Dan Fates, he's like the social media extraordinaire. He did a story about Sean McDermott's earlier comments about the wide receivers being like the utensil drawer in your house that you don't know like what's in there. He talked to some of the wide receivers about where they think they fit in and who the other players are. Who's the spork, who's the spatula, who's the tongs. It's pretty fun. And then I actually have a sit-down interview coming up with DeJuan Smoot, a new player to the team who's had a lot of versatility on the defensive line. Great guy, played his whole career in Jacksonville, coming off an Achilles injury a couple years ago. So he's trying to kind of get back into form, but great guy. So we'll have those stories coming up. And if you haven't checked it out, shameless plug, I love the how well did the Bills know Rochester story that Mike does.
Funny.
It's really funny. You can find that on social media or on the 13Wham, 13wham.com.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Real quick, the utensils thing from McDermott, that's funny. Just tells me he doesn't know how to cook, though.
No, well, as someone who now owns a house, and we've only been in it for not even 2 years, it is astonishing how much stuff just compiles in like a little minute. So I kind of got what he was saying, where the other day, it's funny, like the first week of camp, I just, I opened my utensil drawer and I was like, I thought of McDermott's comments and I was like, yeah, well, we got some weird stuff. Like, I'm like, we got matchbooks. I'm like, why do we have? I don't know. I know that sounds probably silly, but just like the weirdest stuff. So yeah, I gave a little giggle at that, and I was thinking of Sean McDermott a couple years ago saying the Bills wide receivers were Smurfs. So he really loves the unique analogies.
You're either a Smurf or a kitchen utensil.
Yeah.
Thinks highly of those wide receivers. Jenna, thank you so much for carving out some time for us, and enjoy the rest of the preseason.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Earlier today from St. John Fisher University, live in the sports bar, it's Danger and Battaglia, wrapping up Buffalo Bills training camp for another season here in the Flower City.
Yeah, practice this morning was lighter, certainly lighter than yesterday, and boy, they don't waste it. They're not sitting around, having lunch or anything.
No,
when
they got up
done,
and they're gone.
It is done, and the teardown began. So you and I figured, all right, let's just go back to the air-conditioned studio.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
In fact, the only benefit to staying back at camp would have been to do a little scavenger hunt, a little scrounging afterwards. Maybe hit the dorms, see if the players left any valuables behind. I hear that they do that, by the way. I hear that they'll show up with their flat screen TVs and just kind of leave them behind.
Really?
Yeah, that's the word on the street, that every now and then, after they're done with camp, they just kind of, it's fine. Whatever. I'd rather not take that back.
I would think Fisher Security might not let you go through Dorsey Hall or
can't
wherever
do that?
it is. No.
Oh, let me ask you this then. If we're talking about weird utensils, what's the weirdest utensil you have in your kitchen that you can think of?
Spork was a funny one. I don't own a spork. What is the weirdest
Nobody
one?
owns a spork. It's something you just kind of stumble on. You have it from that one time I went to Popeyes 12 years ago, they put a spork in my bag and I kept it.
We still have sippy cups.
Really?
Kids are, yes. I'm going to get in trouble for this by bringing that up.
Okay.
Like, the time to recycle or throw out, right?
Yeah, those need to go.
Yeah.
We have, the collection of water bottles in my house it's out of control. It's reached, it's code red in my kitchen with straws. They're not sippy cups. They're teenager sippy cups is what they are.
You know what we have too? Like, you go to Disney, and if you got the meal plan there.
Oh, you get the tumbler.
The tumbler. Okay, this was what, 8-9 years ago? Adios.
Wouldn't it be nice if you just bring that to any soda fountain and just pop it down and get free soda? Like if Disney had that kind of reach, that kind of pull, where it worked outside the borders of the resort, where you could get that unlimited soda supply, and we're all walking around with corn syrup oozing out of our pores.
Do you think if it went back to All-Star Sports or the Caribbean resort there, like all of a sudden I could use that again?
I think that's what they are meant for, right?
Yeah.
Like lifetime supply of blue Powerade, if you so desire. That's good. I've got one of those Italian coffee makers. You know what I'm talking about? I know the name of it escapes me, and I don't want to butcher it because it would make my family upset. But the metal coffee makers where you put the espresso in and the water underneath, the water boils up through it. It's called a castagnette or something like that. But the water boils up, and you've got basically espresso right from your stove. We've got a couple of those, and I love them, but we rarely use them. Those I don't know who on the Buffalo Bills would be that, the one that's kind of percolating underneath, that's ready to brew, ready to pop, deliver.
Kyer Elam.
Ooh.
Kyer Elam. Like, we'll hear more from Joe Biscaglia. Like, okay, was this real or not? Joe Biscaglia will be coming up here about a half hour.
Yeah. Up next, we want to give you Sean McDermott's comments from earlier today. Before practice, he spoke with the Buffalo Bills media. Sean McDermott's full press conference where he lays out the plan for Saturday in the preseason opener and heaps some praise on his kicker and Tyrell Shavers, and also clarifies who will be calling plays on defense. It'll be Bobby Babich up in the booth come Saturday. Sean McDermott's press conference is on the way next here on The Fan Rochester on 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester. The best place to bet the games this summer is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm Mike Danger for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Then you can bet on all your favorite international teams and all your favorite sports, from basketball to badminton and soccer to swimming. FanDuel has it all. So don't miss your chance to score $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Mike to sign up and start betting the games today. Make every moment more with FanDuel. 21 plus and physically present in New York. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with
Rochester. And streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester. An Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Fisher portion of Bills training camp has broken. Josh Allen and the starters will see about a quarter worth of action. The Bills take on the Bears this coming Saturday. Sean McDermott on who's impressed him during this camp.
I think Shavers overall now, he's just, I mentioned before, he's so darn consistent in his daily approach, and I just really appreciate he's out there playing special teams. I mean, he had one of the better reps in special teams for us the other day. So he's doing a nice job, and, we'll see.
We'll talk to Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic. That's coming up later this hour here in the Sports Bar. At the Olympics, U.S. men's basketball, they've got some work to do. They're in the second half, trailing Serbia 54-47, 8:19 remaining in the third. Red Wings tonight play in Buffalo. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
McDermott said it's important to get a feel for the speed of the game this time of year.
Mike Danger.
Spirits seem high today. You've got perfect weather, and you have that one last practice here before it gets real, right?
Gene Battaglia.
Normally a lighter practice. That's what I would expect tomorrow here, 2 days out from the first preseason game. So
I think they're a better football team this year than they were last year.
I'm excited about this team.
One more camp day here on campus before the team pulls up stakes, heads back to Buffalo, prepares for their preseason opener Saturday afternoon against the Chicago Bears.
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
We welcome you back into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. A bittersweet day for us here in the Sports Bar. Last day, Buffalo Bills training camp at St. John Fisher University. So we are back in the cozy confines of our High Falls studios, but had plenty of conversation and was able to take in all of this morning's session, albeit a more toned-down session for the Buffalo Bills. No pads. It didn't feel like it was a full-speed practice.
I've covered so many of these. I remember Greg Williams would do like a dumb little Olympic thing with dizzy sticks and carrying the eggs or whatever it was. I mean, okay, like we don't need to do those sort of team bonding things that you're doing at your family picnic or whatever it is, but they got some work in today. But it was a little subdued, I will say that.
Yeah, and the moving trucks were there and packed and ready to go. As soon as practice was up, they were gone. And the Buffalo Bills are now ready to head back to Orchard Park and prepare for Saturday's preseason opener against the Bears. 1 o'clock, a game you'll be able to hear on the Fan Rochester. We had the chance to catch up with the Athletics' Joe Biscaglia. He joined us earlier today. We'll have that conversation coming up for you later on this hour. We've got happy hour, a full recap of not just what we saw today at practice, but all of training camp as we prepare for Saturday. And plenty to react to from head coach Sean McDermott, who spoke to the media today for one last time here before practice, one last time from St. John Fisher at least, before Saturday's preseason opener. We wanted to get you that full press conference. This is Sean McDermott earlier this morning on the Fan Rochester.
So it's been a good camp. It always is up here, and the people of St. John Fisher, the Bills staff, as I mentioned at the outset of camp, have done a phenomenal job again of hosting us. The neighboring towns, Pittsford included, welcoming in so many ways to our team and our staff. And let's not forget the medical people who show up here every day to serve not only the team, but the fans, security people, police officers. I mean, it's just amazing, right? The day-to-day security that's here, staff-wise, to help us get across the street, in our dorms, just phenomenal. Support here, so can't thank everyone enough. And then there's a lot of people behind the scenes, that sometimes the toilets tend to get a little backed up in training camp at different times, and so there's people that service those as well, and we so appreciate them also here. So I'll give you an injury update. Not much really has changed, a couple additions if anything. So safety Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, Nick Morrow, Chase Claypool, Ty Johnson, Travis Clayton, Eddie, Daquan Jones. We added Casey Toohill. Casey tweaked his groin yesterday. Justin Shorter still with the knee, and then this morning Matt Collins with a leg that is a little sore this morning, and then KJ Hamler is currently being evaluated. Not sure if he's going to go or not. All of those will not practice today, and then the majority of those will not play in the game. We'll see on Mac and his situation, the same with KJ as it relates to the game. As far as the game goes, we're looking forward to playing. We kind of getting to this point in training camp where, as you see some of the skirmishes start to break out, guys are getting a little ornery, and it's time to go against another opponent here. So we look forward to finishing today's camp and today's practice the right way, but also getting in front of our fans at home come this Saturday at 1 o'clock. So playtime wise, I know that's what you're looking for. The ones will play. They'll play roughly a quarter, give or take. It's really, to me, it's getting them ramped up and ready to go for the season. It's an important step. Hard to simulate the speed of the game, and so getting that in preseason is important. Going through warm-ups and the energy that comes with playing a game in front of fans, and being able to manage that. So there's a lot of reasons for it. Like I said, it's just another step. So with that, I'll turn it over to you with your questions.
Last year, he didn't play the first. He played in the second, maybe even the third. So do you think maybe just this week get it done and not use him?
We'll just take it 1 week at a time, Sal. So, there's a number of new faces on our offense also, including his receiving core, and so some of that is baked into this. But the biggest thing is individually we've got to get ourselves ready to go and go from there. So.
Joe Brady was pretty complimentary about Josh's camp. How would you evaluate him?
Yeah, I would agree. Very focused. When you look at his throws and accuracy and whatnot, he's been very accurate and sharp. There's some plays that are newer, and some time on task with the receiving core, as I mentioned, that are newer. That is a new group this year. I would say that they're still working through some things, and that'll continue.
How much can you sense that the team building element of being away from camp has really translated onto the field with so many new people here as we've gone on these 2.5+ weeks?
I think it's grown, John, and definitely coming to camp has helped facilitate it as opposed to staying at home. But I would say that needs to continue because so many new faces, as you mentioned. So it's not something that needs to end now. It needs to really continue and on into the early parts of the season.
Sean, when we talked to you day one of training camp, you mentioned how Matt Milano was going to have his load managed throughout camp, and just kind of wondering, he was out there almost every day. Just where do you see him at now? Is that kind of what you were expecting, or how do you think he got through camp?
Well, camp still continues. It's just different locations, so let me just say that. With respect to Matt, it reminds me of, you're around injuries where it takes a year to really get themselves back. I'm not saying it's going to take him a year, but I do think it's him getting reacclimated to moving at full speed, playing at full speed, and then trusting that he's back, right? So there's just more than a physical component that goes into it, and he's working through that, and I think every day he's gotten a little bit better. I think yesterday he had James Cook in the flat, and James is a tough matchup in space, and Matt did a good job there.
To keep checking in with you on the defensive play calling thing during camp, I want to check.
Yeah.
Have you taken that into the preseason, that decision, or do you feel like a decision has been made?
Yeah, so Bobby will call the plays this weekend, and then we'll take it from there.
Tell us a little bit about just what you've seen in DeMar Hamlin and whether you feel he's ready for an opportunity to make his way to a prominent role at safety.
Yeah, I mean, he's again, I've said this before, a unique situation that very few can even relate to in terms of his situation coming off that event that he had. And so last year, again, just kind of getting through last year and getting his confidence back maybe a little bit, and which is, again, to be expected. And then now this year, I would say, a deeper focus and a deeper intentionality of a daily process, right? With playing the position, with communicating, and all that goes into playing the safety position.
So if you look at the summer that Kyer Elam has had, the camp that he's had, going in, how has that met your expectations after what you saw in the spring and what he's been able to kind of establish with his play this summer?
Well, we needed to, make sure that position, whether it's the first corner, second corner, third corner, fourth corner, those are all important positions because of how important that position is overall as a cornerback position to us. So Kyer right now is in that third position, and I think he's done a real nice job. Probably the biggest thing is he's been consistent, and listen, no one's perfect. We're all going to have things we want to work on. I know he does, but I really appreciate how consistent he's been really from the first day of training camp.
Sean, is it accurate to say that when the team split up offense and defense, you spent a little more time in training camp on the offensive field and let the defense kind of hear Bobby's voice a little bit more?
Yes, looking, and really what I was doing was spending a little bit more time with watching the receiving core and seeing how it was taking shape, and watching Josh, of course, and then giving Bobby some space, right? He doesn't need me looking over his shoulder all the time, and he needs to know that I trust him as well, and so some of that space comes from that.
What surprised you about the wide receiver?
KJ Hamler, both as a return man and a receiver?
Yeah, speed, that's the obvious thing that stands out the most rather early, and then just make sure you're all right. Making sure you're all right. Thought you were having one of these donuts back here. No, I think KJ's had a good camp. Obviously new to our team. Like I said, the speed element is real, and whether he's playing offense or the return game. So I'll be excited to see him. Hopefully he's healthy enough to play in the game this weekend.
You said you spent a lot of time watching the receivers. Has anything surprised you, getting a closer look?
No, not really. I mean, I think more than anything, I like where the kind of the unselfishness is in terms of that position. In terms of just every day. I think if you charted it, there's somebody different catching the ball. I'm talking about all through 1s, 2s, and 3s. And I think Joe and Adam and RC have done a really good job. I'm talking about Adam Henry, our receivers coach, of making sure the ball gets spread around and the quarterbacks, not just Josh, but also Shane and Mitch.
You talked about the utensil drawer earlier, not really knowing what you had with the silverware. Do you have more of an idea of what now is in that silverware drawer after 2 weeks?
Where's Joe? Was Joe the one that asked the spork? Yeah, still trying to figure out who the spork is. TBD on that one. But other than that, I've got a little bit. Max said it was Keon. Sport. Yeah.
Dangerous yet.
I don't think I can match that one. No, they've all worked hard, and I appreciate their effort. Blocking in the run game. I mean, those are some things that get overlooked at the receiver position, and like we take pride in our corners tackling and our receivers blocking.
Sean, we saw all that growth in Terrell Bernard, year 1 to 2. Have you seen that in Dorian Williams in terms of being more acclimated to what's going on and then reacting quicker like we saw last year?
Yeah, I think you see that similar growth for sure. There's a lot of growth that takes place at any position from year 1 to year 2. The first year is there's just so much thrown at these players off the field, on the field. I mean, they go through things that people don't even know they go through, real life things, right? And you think that they don't, but they do. And so now in his second year, it's been fun to watch Dorian get a little bit more comfortable in the defensive system, more work to do there. And so we'll see, again, anxious to watch him like the others play this weekend.
Given the time Chase played for this place, how far has he fallen behind in this whole competition?
Yeah, I mean that's some of the new players that we added. It's a shame because they've missed a considerable amount of time. Chase being one of them. We mentioned Cole, Mike, and so forth. So it's just it's hard to evaluate when the player isn't out there, whether it's Chase or anybody. And I know he's fighting like crazy to get back, and we're anxious to have him back.
Sean, there's a little more of a lean in the league to go into a designated pass rusher, having that as part of the rush arsenal. Is there room for that in your defense as much as you rotate already, and could that be a role for Vaughn this year?
Designated pass rusher? Could be, although I wouldn't sell Vaughn short. I mean, he's done some things on early downs in camp so far that I think have flashed, and we'll see where it goes and how it trends. We certainly need to manage him and just his overall rep count in camp, and but I think he continues to trend up and up, and but some of the things he's done on early downs have been impressive also.
What do you take on, Sean? What's your take on just the role in general? Is that something that can work in your defense?
It is. Yeah, it affects other positions then, because how many take Vaughn out of the equation, but when you have a niche player, how many niche players can actually be on your roster and then not playing special teams, so it's all connected, right? And one piece affects another piece.
John, what have you observed in Vaughn during training camp that maybe you didn't see as much of during his return season in U-Class ball?
Well, I think early on it's been different because he's been able to be in training camp. If I remember correctly, he wasn't even in training camp last year, able to participate. So that's definitely a big step in the right direction. And with that comes his influence, just the standard that he approaches every day with, physically, mentally, some of his leadership piece with that comes with it as well, and so I think we're definitely ahead of where we were last year, and we'll know a lot more as we get into these weekly preseason games, and as we get trend closer to the start of the season.
Sean, is there anyone, whether it's a rookie, veteran, that's been a pleasant surprise through this point of camp or made a bigger jump than you kind of were expecting?
Veteran-wise, are you talking the veterans that have been?
Anyone on the team that's just made a bigger jump than you maybe were anticipating at this point in training camp?
Well, I've really enjoyed the overall competition. I know that's a cop-out answer for you, but the overall, I mean, you guys are out there watching practice. One day the defense, quote-unquote, has a better day. The other, wins the day, and the next day the offense wins the day. And, I really like what I've seen from T. Bass as he's been out there on a special team scale. I think he's in a good rhythm. And getting back in a game and kicking, taking, opportunities that we can in preseason for both Sam and T. Bass will be important for us. So, I mean, you may see on some fourth downs, I decided not to go for it where I normally would, just to continue to get those guys valuable reps and time on task. And so I've been overall very pleased with the day-to-day effort, and I'm not really worried about one side of the ball versus the other in terms of it hasn't gotten out, kind of off balance there in terms of who's winning, who's not. I mean, there's good competition, and I think Shavers overall now he's just, I mentioned before, he's so darn consistent in his daily approach, and I just really appreciate he's out there playing special teams. I mean, he had one of the better reps in special teams for us the other day, so he's doing a nice job, and we'll see where it goes.
I know you like to keep things in perspective with rookies, but Dwayne Carter from our side has looked like he's had a tremendous training camp. Has that been your evaluation? Is he somebody that maybe fits into that pool of taking a huge step?
I feel like the light has started to come on with him. There was a series of practices early where, probably wasn't what we needed it to be, and somewhere around the scrimmage last week, give or take, maybe a day before the scrimmage, and then the scrimmage, I call it the scrimmage, the red and blue scrimmage there. I thought he really flashed from that's more of what we need. And listen, he's going to play a pivotal role in that third, fourth, defensive tackle spot for us, ideally, and so with that comes a lot of development that still needs to happen, but been impressed with some of his flashes of late.
As you've watched Dorn Smoot move in and out, are you surprised at how versatile you've been able to kind of use him this training camp?
Yeah, not surprised. I mean, he's a guy that we targeted in the free agent period there, Josh. He's a dog, man. I mean, you watch him, and this is another player that, a year ago, he was coming off of the Achilles, and I think probably people didn't maybe, they look at the film and they're like, no. But when you're coming off a major injury like that, like some of the other players that have already been mentioned, that's almost like, to me, a mulligan year, if you will, of just they're not really who they are capable of being. And I think he's on a mission now to prove a lot of those people that thought that wrong. And we're happy to have him and his family here, and he's been a great addition to our defense.
There's Sean McDermott earlier today before Bills practice, their final practice at St. John Fisher University, as Buffalo Bills training camp has wrapped up for the Rochester portion.
Yeah, there's some nuggets in there. Okay, the football stuff. You have Bobby Babich calling plays this week.
Yep.
And then beyond that, we have McDermott saying, hey, these receivers he has on his team are unselfish. Which is
a
an
little
indirect,
slightly veiled dig at Stephon Diggs. Yeah, I hear that, and you also hear more praise being heaped on Tyrell Shavers, but also Tyler Bass.
Yeah, that was the same kind of question there, and I thought when that question was coming his way, he's not going anywhere near this. He's got a lot of guys, I'm sure, that he would like to kind of single out, but he couldn't help himself. He saw it as an opportunity to pump the tires a little bit of Tyler Bass. And if Tyler Bass misses a kick, against the Bears, yes, it's a story.
It's a story. Is Tyler Bass in trouble? Yeah, I think he is. I think he needs to regain that consistency that we saw earlier in his Bills career. Got a developing story happening over here at Paris.
Yeah, 8:06 remaining, and it's Serbia leading the United States in men's basketball 78-67. 15 3-pointers for Serbia in this game. And as Tristan Crick has pointed out, the body language for the U.S. just bad.
It's just bad. I mean, you can tell there's one team that wants it, there's another team that doesn't. I mean, like when you watch anything competitive, a lot of times somebody is juiced and ready for it, and the other team or the other competitor is just kind of like dejected. And right now, Team USA, they look like they've had their heart ripped out of them.
It will be the winner of this game faces France Victor Wembanyama, and France defeating today Germany.
Well, we'll keep you updated on what goes on at Paris here with the semifinal in the men's basketball tournament continuing here with Team USA down to Serbia here with 7:19 left in the fourth quarter. We're going to take a break and come back with our conversation from earlier today. The Athletics' Joe Buscaglia makes his return into the sports bar. It's been far too long since Joe B stopped in, and we love his insight and his thoughts on Buffalo Bills training camp, Buffalo Bills football. We will talk to Joe B next on The Fan.
Sports Update.
The training camp portion at St. John Fisher University, that has broken. Everybody back in Buffalo. Josh Allen and the starters will see about a quarter worth of action. And the Bills take on the Bears on Saturday. Head coach Sean McDermott wants more out of his special teams.
You know, opportunities that we can in preseason for both Sam and T-Bass will be important for us. So, I mean, you may see on some fourth downs, I decided not to go for it where I normally would, just to continue to get those guys valuable reps and time on task. And so I've been overall very pleased with the day-to-day effort.
Bills and Bears Saturday at 1 o'clock here on The Fan. We'll talk to Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic coming up next here in the Sports Bar. U.S. men's basketball. They are in trouble. 5 minutes to go, trailing Serbia 84-77. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome back into the Sport. Danger and Battaglia. We're live from the final day of Buffalo Bills training camp at St. John Fisher College. The moving trucks are in sight, and so is the Athletics' Joe Biscaglia, who makes his return into the Sports Bar. Buddy, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys, too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Joe, camp wrapping up here. Biggest takeaways here for the Buffalo Bills, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's just overall a lot more fresh than it has been the last few years, and I think that comes with roster turnover, and it's honestly a pretty good thing for NFL teams to do every once in a while. Like, you can have the same roster going in and out with just like micro changes like the Bills have had, and you can have a certain degree of success, but sometimes things grow a little bit stale, and you want to try to get those little bit of a different feel to what you're doing, and I think the Bills have that. Are they going to be better immediately? Maybe not, but it's on their way to where they are pushing forward, getting a little bit younger on their roster, resetting it a little bit, and while still trying to be this competitive team that can go to the playoffs and push for something.
So the turnover that you're talking about, and we'll bring this up because it happened in the last 24 hours, Stephon Diggs' name has been mentioned, and this is a big deal. And Josh Allen says he doesn't necessarily miss it, but of course you miss it. And Sean McDermott today, during his time, saying he likes the unselfishness that they have in the wide receiving room right now. Are you buying into the everybody can eat philosophy that it seems like they have? Because it feels like that's a Sean McDermott thing, that Sean McDermott would much rather have his kind of guys in here playing unselfish football rather than have a guy who's an extraordinary talent, Stephon Diggs, who might have been a little bit of a headache to deal with from time to time.
Well, I think one of the many things that NFL coach in sports in general like to do from one year to the next is do the complete opposite of the thing that they just did for however many years it was. And in this case, it's where maybe they had centralized targets and had the same 2 or 3 guys playing on the field at all times. Like the snap counts were crazy in favor of Diggs, Davis, and then eventually Khalil Shakir last year. I think what they want to do this year is just to have like more of like a rotation amongst the top 4, maybe 5, probably the top 4, and you know, just try and have a different approach that way. But my main thing is, okay, I want to see what their decisions are with that group when this is not a fresh new idea. Like do they only take a 1-year stance like this, and then in 2025 they take a big swing at a wide receiver again, which I think is very much within the realm of possibilities, because Brandon Beane has always been a very pro, I like to have a top receiver target on my roster type of guy. So I think it's a bit of a to be continued. Like, is this the receiver room before the receiver room is complete? But they're going to figure things out and see what sticks. And the thing I'm a big NBA guy, so the thing I kind of like to liken it to is like how the Oklahoma City Thunder approached this past season, where they just had a bunch of young guys, a bunch of things that they didn't know how it would kind of coalesce together. Mm-hmm. And once they found out, then they knew what to approach in the offseason this past year. I won't get too deep into the NBA weeds, but now I think that you can liken that to what the Bills receiver room is doing, and having all of these different skill sets, all of these different guys, all of these different personalities to see who can be potentially a starter, and if they do have a number 1 on their roster. I'm not convinced they do, but they're going to find out.
Well, I'll take it from this standpoint where Diggs is not on the roster. I always felt when it came to the leadership in the offense, yes, it's always been Josh Allen, but he had to kind of defer to Diggs in a way. What do you think this looks like, Josh Allen, the leader now moving forward?
Yeah, I think for him, it's just going to have more command of the offense and really getting the most out of his players because, you know, you can say what you will about what happened or didn't happen with Stephon Diggs last year, but there is a talent disparity at the receiver position from what they had last year, and that is a very real thing. So now it's to a point where you have to figure out, can Allen be the guy to elevate the talents that these and the skill sets that these guys have? Can he get them to be a better version of what they currently are? And that's where the leadership, I think, has to come through. All the talking and all of the he's got that nailed. Everybody in the locker room loves the guy. So now it's just a matter of helping guys become the best versions of themselves, and if he can do that with a receiver room that, quite frankly, has a lot of questions right now. I mean, your top four has Shakir, who I think is a really nice receiver. He's going to be their main slot guy. Curtis Samuel, who has been mostly a wide receiver 4 throughout his career. Mac Hollins, who has been a veteran journeyman. And he's going to be getting a bunch of time. And then Keon Coleman, the rookie, who hasn't had much more than 50 yards a game in his college career. So what exactly do you have here, and can Allen get the most out of that group?
It'll be interesting to see. I also look at safety and think, all right, this hasn't really gone to their plan, I don't think. You know, if you felt strongly about Damar Hamlin as a starter, you wouldn't have drafted Cole Bishop in the second round. You got the injuries. Hamlin in the preseason, I think, is going to be fun to watch, to see, you know, like, he's a good football player. But is he there week one? How do you think this all plays out? And I know a lot of it has to do with the injuries, but I bring it up because I think that there might be some roster gymnastics with IR at the safety position that might free up an extra roster spot. How does it all look to you, Joe?
Yeah, dead on. I think the safety spot has just been a bit of a mess, honestly. Like, they came into this camp, and I had legitimate wonders if Damar Hamlin would even make the team based on what they had.
Same.
Because Cam Lewis is still someone that factors into the equation. Then Cole Bishop, the rookie, is obviously someone that they would like to see excel. And then Mike Edwards, who they brought in from Kansas City. But Edwards and Bishop are both week to week with long-term injuries from a camp perspective. And it's been all Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. Now, say what you will about Taylor Rapp's season, which I don't think was particularly the best last year. Hamlin is inexperienced and mostly played a lot of strong safety in his time when he was on the field. So now he's basically taking up the free safety spot. And you have to wonder about his range and ability to cover those deep areas. So I think this is very much a to be continued. I think if they had their druthers, that Cole Bishop would be the guy and be healthy, but that's just not the case. So I would not rule out them making a move at safety. I think there is potential for that. I think there is a guy out there that has lots of experience in the Bill system that has not yet declared his retirement.
It's number 23?
And they have not issued that number for all the defensive backs.
Probably doesn't like training camp at this point in his career either.
He used to say he loves
of course.
Training camp. But yeah, he's a super competitive guy, and the closer we get to the regular season, it just makes you wonder if he's going to be like, all right, let's do one more. And that being Micah Hyde. We haven't said his name, but we'll see. And if he walks in and is able to kind of bridge the gap from what they have currently to Cole Bishop, whether it be at the end of 2024 or 2025 and beyond, I think that would be a good situation for them.
Joe Buscaglia, The Athletic, our guest here, staying in the defensive backfield. I think this is one of the interesting stories this camp. Kyer Elam, can you talk about his career arc? Because this isn't typical. And what we saw in this camp, Joe, is it real here? Can he really be corner 3 or maybe even more?
Yeah, I think for him, they just want to see if he can potentially be the starter in 2025. That would be my gauge on it, because Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, I don't think they're going anywhere. They have Douglas, who is the take risks and create turnovers guy. Benford is very much the steady hand, where he's going to keep everything in front of him, but also be sticky in coverage on these routes of some guys who are better athletes than him, quite frankly. So Elam, him taking a step forward this camp was huge, because now it gives them the potential to where they go, okay, let's see how he develops. he will undoubtedly get time on the field at some point this year because injuries happen to corners all the time. They have been snake bitten at corner with injuries throughout their tenure since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have come around. So I would, once he gets those opportunities, what he can do with them, that will speak volumes as to whether or not we're sitting here in sitting here in March and April as to whether or not cornerback needs to be something that they address, whether or not they need to re-sign Rasul Douglas, or should they draft one. If he answers that bell, then we could very easily be seeing Kaiir Elam being the risk-taking cornerback, starting opposite from Christian Benford, and then seeing what they have from there.
Joe, let's share our biggest concerns for the Buffalo Bills heading into the season. I'll start. Gino, you can think about this as well.
Yep.
I'm concerned that James Cook has a ball security issue, that he's not got the greatest hands. We saw some of it last year. We saw some of it at camp. He makes some really, really special plays, but I'm worried that he's the guy that other teams are going to key on in terms of that's our target to get turnovers and win football games. What's your biggest concern about this team heading into the season?
Undoubtedly the safety position. I know we just touched on it, but
yeah.
I don't know that people are quite aware of how much there is a drop-off from what they had last year and the previous years. And last year was their worst year at safety, not including the year that both Poyer and Hyde got banged up. Poyer and Hyde definitely both took a step back. I think Poyer took more of a step back than Hyde did last year. But the difference between even them to what they got from Taylor Rapp was pretty substantial. And then from there, DeMar Hamlin, who's an unknown at this point if he has to start, and Cole Bishop, if he has to start, he's a rookie. Mike Edwards, who has, maybe a handful of practices to right now. I think it's a legitimate concern, and there's a lot of good offenses they're going to be going up against early. And if they don't have that back end sewed up, then that could be a problem area.
I'm going to give you mine, and again, it's not number one because I would say certainly the safeties are concerned. But Sean McDermott today, you were there, asked the question, "Hey, which rookie or veteran has impressed you?" And paraphrasing, and he begins the answer saying, "I'm going to give you a cop-out answer." Okay, and then he pivots and throws out a name I would not expect, Tyler Bass, almost as if to pump his tires a little bit. Do we have a kicking problem, Joe?
I think the preseason is going to be big for him to boost that confidence. When he was in that stadium practice, he missed a one pretty badly where they had to rush out on the field and everything like that. And then he missed a couple yesterday, it was here at camp. I'm not, I don't want to take a 3-week sample and be like, okay, he's a problem. But he definitely had his worst year so far last year. And you just want to make sure that your kicker has that confidence, especially because he's signed for the next 3 years. They can get out of it at some point before the full 3 years is done. But this is someone that they invested in, and they want that return on investment. So, yeah, if it takes some pumping of the tires from time to time from Sean McDermott, it's not as though he's been horrible and just missing everything left and right. But he used to be just this automatic guy. That's the reason they re-signed him. They're like, okay, we have one of the best kickers in the league right now, and last year he was not that.
Another guy that McDermott brought up in his morning press conference, he brought him up earlier in camp as well, is Tyrell Shavers. We struggle with this. I mean, he's been visible on the field, and he's made plays, and I'm sure we'll see plenty of him in the preseason, but I have a hard time seeing his path to the final 53. And if he's on the practice squad, is there any team out there looking at Tyrell Shavers saying, oh, that's a guy we need to add to our roster? I don't know the answer to that, but I venture to guess no. Talk about the wide receiver competition because it's gotten the most eyeballs, and I think we've spent the most time talking about it through this camp because if they only roster 5 like they did last year, there's going to be some notable names on the outside looking in.
Yeah, for sure. I think the team that you might be alluding to might be the Buffalo Bills, honestly. I think they really like Tyrell Shavers. He is a multi-use receiver. I've seen him play all 3 spots. They really like what he does on special teams, that being a gunner. And he can chip in on some other units as well. I think he's got a legit shot to make it. He has definitely outplayed Justin Shorter to me, and they both came in the league at the same time. Justin Shorter made the team outright before they threw him on IR.
Yeah.
So he's someone that also hasn't been able to get on the field. Chase Claypool has not been on the field since, July 28th, I think it is.
Yeah.
And that's significantly hurting his chances. KJ Hamler, I think, needs to win the return job to get a spot. And even for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think he's pretty firmly in. But still, if they keep 6, I think that 6th person will need to have a legitimate special teams function, which they just didn't have last year at the receiver position. So that Shavers has that, and if they have been crushed by the waiver wire before, and if they really like someone, they're not going to try and sneak them. So I would not be surprised if Shavers is on the right side of the bubble.
Yeah, is there any particular player young that has caught your eye? Carter being the 3rd-round pick, being one, certainly that it looks like he's made this team, Joe.
Oh yeah, he'll be one of the 2 rotational defensive tackles. So he's in. I really like what Daquan Hardy has done so far at this camp, and they build him as maybe just a return specialist when they took him in the 6th round, and he has done that part of the job. But what he's done on defense specifically has really been more impressive to me, because they looked at him as maybe starting off as a nickel, and he did that early on in camp, was with the 3rd team. Then eventually started working with the 2nd team defense. Then, midway through camp, they gave him a new assignment. Okay, let's see what you can do on the boundary. And he's continued to go between the boundary and the interior, and while still balancing all of this. So if he can do those 3 things well, that's a multi-use player. And that, to me, is worthy of a roster spot. So he's someone that's caught my eye. I think Javon Solomon, the defensive end from Troy, the 5th-round pick, has been really good, too. Really some great flashes as a pass rusher. Still has to, have that overall rounded game. But when you have some pass rushing juice, the Bills are going to get excited about you. It's the reason Kingsley Jonathan has been here for a couple of years. And Javon Solomon, I think, has that, and they have reason to be excited about him.
Joe, we're going to see the starters for about a quarter on Saturday for the preseason opener. What are we looking to take away from the game on Saturday?
Just don't get hurt.
That's it.
I mean, I'm not a big play your starters in the preseason guy, but I think them trying to see the functionality the offense has is probably important to them. Maybe how the offense performed a couple of days ago might have influenced their decision, because last year they did not play in the first preseason game. But the number one responsibility is to make sure that the franchise quarterback does not get hurt and to not call plays to where he could get hurt. So, that's going to be a to be determined.
Babich calling the defense anything?
Yeah, I mean that's substantial. It's the first shot we've seen at it, and they didn't commit to anything past that. But all along, he had opportunities to go elsewhere. It always leaned in the way to where Sean is probably going to let Bobby Babich call the plays, because this is a guy, young, bright mind. I've always been of the belief, and Bobby Babich, to me, as soon as I saw him, how he operated in practice, I'm like, oh, Sean probably sees a little bit of himself in Bobby Babich, because similar trajectories from where they were. And you also have to see how he moved him around the staff, too, which was pretty in line with how Sean did in Philadelphia, too. So it was someone gave Sean a shot, and I think he's doing the same for Bobby Babich. So I would not be surprised if this is just the beginning of what is to come through the regular season, too.
Joe Biscaglia, The Athletic. Tell our listeners what you got coming up here, you and the great staff over there.
Yeah, I have my camp debrief, which talked about some of the players we touched on today, some of them that did not, and then, as always, daily stuff from me from camp or practices, and way too nerdy stuff too. So
we're back on X too. We can follow along.
Oh yeah. At Joe Biscaglia, there's a silent G in there, which I'm sorry for, but yeah, I'm on there, and I'm just giving you all the Bills updates whenever I can.
Joe, thank you for making time for us. We know how busy your schedule is. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great to me.
Turn into the sports bar. Joe Biscaglia of The Athletic stopping by the sports bar on set there at St. John Fisher University earlier today, right after Buffalo Bills practice, their final practice in Rochester.
We got to shift gears here and just talk about what happened at the Olympics. The United States men's basketball team, down by 17, they survive over Serbia. 95-91 ended up being the final. U.S. doesn't take the lead until the final 3 minutes of the game. Danger. This was way too close for comfort today.
Yeah, it almost feels like they woke up just in time to snatch that win from Serbia, that they played with a different level of intensity down the stretch there with like less than 5 minutes to go. There was just a different level of intensity because prior to that, they looked like they had their souls sucked out of them by just a physical, big, just shooting the lights out Serbian team, and Jokic, much like I think he does with the Nuggets, made his teammates around him better throughout the course of this Olympic tournament. He's still the real deal and kind of scoring at will for that Serbian team.
Yeah, and I'm a big critic of Kevin Durant. He pulled him out today.
He hit a clutch shot. Steph was unbelievable. Unbelievable stat line for Steph. And LeBron was a killer when he needed to be a killer as well. So everybody's stepping up there late. The U.S. get the victory over Serbia. They will advance to the gold medal match against France. And, for Serbia, win his bronze medal game.
You said after the Lakers win, you said you were surprised that you didn't feel more. So I'm curious what you are feeling right now, and if you're looking forward to a parade coming up in Denver.
When is parade? When is parade?
When is bronze
Thursday.
medal?
No. I need to go home. Okay.
When is bronze medal ceremony? No.
Bronze medal game?
No. I need to go home. Jokic is the best. Love that guy.
You wonder, was that the pep talk that Steve Kerr gave? Hey guys, if we lose this game, we still have another game. We would have to play the bronze medal game, so we might as well win here.
You're not going home. Nice to see them advance, albeit a little too close for comfort there for Team USA. We come back with happy hour next in the sports bar. More coverage from today's practice. We'll recap everything that went on, not just on the field but off. Sean McDermott laying out the groundwork for the plan for Saturday's preseason opener against Chicago. Lots to react to there. Our coverage of Buffalo Bills training camp is brought to you by Ace Swim and Leisure, Chilai Ave and Ridge Road in Webster, aceswim.com, and Maddie's Motorsports with locations in Farmington, Spencerport, and Dansville, maddiesmotorsports.com.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with WNIBF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
The Bills are heading back to Buffalo. The St. John Fisher portion of camp has broken. Josh Allen and the starters are going to see about a quarter worth of action for the preseason opener against the Bears on Saturday. Head coach Sean McDermott on who has impressed him during this camp.
I think Shavers overall now, he's just, I mentioned before, he's so darn consistent in his daily approach, and I just really appreciate he's out there playing special teams. I mean, he had one of the better reps in special teams for us the other day, so he's doing a nice job, and we'll see.
Bills and Bears, 1 o'clock. Our coverage will begin 11 a.m. this Saturday here on the Fan Rochester. USA men's basketball. They overcome a 17-point deficit, 95-91. The U.S. beat Serbia. The gold medal game will be against France on Sunday. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
McDermott said it's important to get a feel for the speed of the game this time of year.
Mike Danger.
Spirits seem high today. You've got perfect weather, and you have that one last practice here before it gets real, right?
Gene Battaglia.
Normally a lighter practice. That's what I would expect tomorrow here, 2 days out from the first preseason game. So
I think they're a better football team this year than they were last year.
I'm excited about this team.
One more camp day here on campus before the team pulls up stakes, heads back to Buffalo, prepares for their preseason opener Saturday afternoon against the Chicago Bears.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
It is a bittersweet day for us in the sports bar. Our last day at Buffalo Bills training camp. We were there at St. John Fisher University earlier today, watched the final practice, spoke to a couple of Bills insiders, took in Sean McDermott's press conference, and boy, as soon as practice is over, the moving trucks are loaded, and they are gone.
They did not waste any time today. As it was a little more subdued at practice today, but gosh, with this camp, we saw practices that were hot. They were hitting. Tempers were flaring. That was not the case today. They got some good work in. If there was one play I could tell you about today, though, Danger, this will give us pause here because there's been this story like, wait a second, has MVS actually earned a spot on the team? Well, you see one play, and again, it's only one play, but Josh Allen steps back in the pocket. He gets the extra second, and he's going downfield, and MVS has the corner. Christian Benford beaten by 2 steps, and the safety doesn't come over the top. I mean, that's going for a long touchdown in a game. So there's just kind of a reminder that that is actually why he is here.
Yeah, it was a nice play, and you can't take that away from him. There was also, the play where you could argue, well, he kind of dropped one he should have had. But getting that far behind Benford and the Bills' secondary, a little troublesome for the Bills' defense, and to kind of echo a point that was made last hour by our guest, Joe Buscaglia. If you're concerned about something with this team, be concerned about the safety position right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could talk. It'll be this story this year. It'll be a story next year. It'll be a story 100 years from now. How much should your starters play in the preseason? And if you told me I don't want to see Josh Allen out there, great. I would agree with you on that. But the head coach thinks they need a little bit of work. Can they afford another injury at safety? I mean, you could say, well, Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin, they need work together. And I would hear that, but I don't want them to see more than enough action out there because the drop-off between those two guys and what is behind them, the couple guys they picked up off the street.
Yeah, I think you got guys that can play the position, but maybe are still trying to get familiar with the defense and just learn where they need to be on any given play, understand what's going on out there on the field. At least Hamlin knows that. You could say, hey, he knows that. He might not be their optimal plan at safety, but at least he's familiar.
Well, and Joe said it perfectly. You're not spending a second-round pick, okay, to have the guy sit and learn. Like the whole game plan going in was, okay, this is Cole Bishop's job when he's ready. Well, if you're in the tub, it's kind of hard, right? And these week-to-week injuries can't really give you a time frame. Mike Edwards, that signing danger. Didn't get any work in the spring, and you could say, well, as long as he'll be ready week 1. I'm not thinking that's the case here because he didn't even get the work in here. This is all new to him. So really, right now, week 1, I think it's Rapp and it's Hamlin, and hold your breath after.
Other concerns that you might have going into the preseason opener here on Saturday against the Bears, a game you'll be able to hear on the Fan Rochester with kickoff at 1 o'clock. I mentioned concerns with James Cook's ball security, his hands. Will he be a fumble machine this year? This year he was at times last year a liability. Certainly some memorable drops in the James Cook campaign last year. Will that be reversed? We saw a lot of that during training. We saw a lot of great plays by James Cook as well, but we did see a lot of the ball hitting the turf with James Cook at training camp. This one is an interesting one, too. And we haven't spent a ton of time talking about whether or not Matt Milano is back. We kind of have gone off of what we've seen and what we've heard, but with these injuries that you're coming back from, whether you're Von Miller or you're Trey White or you're Matt Milano, the part that we don't see is what's going on between the ears, the mental part of it. Are you the same player that you were before the injury? Can you get back to that speed? Can you get back to that reckless abandon? And it's hard to tell on the practice field if Matt Milano is back. They continue to say, Sean McDermott continues to say, that as he's getting reacclimated here and moving at full speed, they're gaining more and more trust that he will be back, and he's working through that every day and getting a little bit better every day. Hearing that leads me to be concerned that Matt Milano isn't 100% ready to get back on the field. It isn't 100% back fully from that injury last year.
I think it's just a mental thing. I mean, there's one play that I would give you that's encouraging. It happened yesterday, pass to the flat that was actually caught by James Cook. And Milano diagnosed it. Boom. Okay, not going anywhere. It's short loss or no gain on the play. That's encouraging, seeing the speed get to that. But to your point, there's been times, and forgive me for the reporter who pointed this out, but somebody pointed out to us that Milano, when you watched him, there would be times, okay, he'd be off to the side, just like he's testing the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's certainly okay to do, but it just tells me, all right, well, if you're testing the knee, you're still a little bit concerned. That's any injury like that. That's something that we should pay attention to. That is absolutely the case. And look, there's another concern here too. And if we were playing McDermott McLeise today from that press conference we played last hour, yeah, it's a very straightforward question. The question at today's press conference, which player, either veteran or rookie, has impressed you the most, Coach? Now, as McDermott is getting ready to give his answer, I'm thinking in the back of my head, he ain't going to say anybody. Like, he's not going to. And sure enough, he's like, well, it's going to sound like a cop-out answer, but, all three phases and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, he's not going to answer it. And then he pauses. And he offers up a name. And I swear, anybody listening right now, you wouldn't guess this. He says Tyler Bass.
Yeah.
Tyler Bass. Wait a second. What part of this camp for Tyler Bass has been good? Was it missing the kicks during the blue and the red scrimmage? Was it missing the kicks yesterday at practice? Was it, hey, the ball looks a little different according to Matt Perino? What was it? Or did you just put the brakes on and say, this is my opportunity actually to give a little booster shot here of confidence to the kicker, knowing that if he misses on Saturday, what are we talking about on Monday?
You have a Tyler Bass problem. Yeah. You want to see him, 2022 form, you want to see him automatic. And for large parts of last season, that wasn't the case. And in training camp, it has been a little bit different looking for Tyler Bass. There is no competition for Tyler Bass. There's no other kicker on this roster right now. He's out there. He and Martin are the two kickers on this team, and that is that. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know how it is in the NFL. Gino, if it doesn't work with Tyler Bass, even though they've invested in him, they can find another kicker to do the job tomorrow. You'll see, according to Sean McDermott, more of that conservative play calling just to give those guys their reps. If it's 4th and short, you might see them punt or go for that field goal rather than go for it, more so to give those guys, special teams, the added work and the added evaluation.
I'm not so sure that the Bills have a choice other than just to suck it up with Tyler Bass. According to Spot Track, you decide to cut him, his dead cap hit would be $7.3 million.
Yeah, at this point, who cares about the dead cap? It's already the second worst in the league. Just add more to it. It's just a mess. It's an absolute mess. I think if things don't go well for the Bills, there's your built-in excuse. There's your scapegoat, because traditionally we would say, oh, it's a coach. It's this coordinator. It's that coordinator. Now I'm saying, yeah, no, it's the cap. And if you want a scapegoat, it's probably the receiver that they threw a thinly veiled jab at during the press conference.
Well, that was the other thing, too. Like, this was not your typical McDermott press conference where, okay, more news from the press conference. Hey, Bobby Babbage is going to be calling the plays. Babbage didn't confirm that
That's
directly,
fantastic.
But he said he was going to be up in the box, and, hey, it's going to be kind of a week-to-week thing. But that's the one thing I will give McDermott credit on. He wasn't hovering over Babbage this camp. He was going around to the position groups. He said today he was actually paying more attention to offense and special teams, knowing, hey, I need to kind of let Bobby develop his own identity, which that's a great thing. And I'm sure they consult, as all coaches do, after practice. But the idea that Bobby Babbage will be calling the plays, okay, well, he stayed for a reason. He could have been the coordinator in Miami. He could have been the coordinator with the Giants. He wasn't coming back here just to be the coordinator but not call the plays. You're not going to neuter him like that. Let him do his thing. So that's the good portion. The other portion, now, peek behind the curtain. Our industry, sometimes, whether it's your favorite TV personality or a writer or somebody in radio or whatever it is, they might be working on a story and they might have an agenda. And somebody was working on a story, which, don't get me wrong, it's a legit story. Like the Bills, if you're talking about the Bills this year, okay, well, hey, there's been a big change at wide receiver. Let's talk about that. So that story kicked back up in the news cycle this week.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe Sean McDermott actually answered the question this way today, talking about when asked about Steph Diggs. Well, it wasn't about Steph Diggs. It was about the room this year. And the wide receiver room this year, was it less selfish or isn't selfish? Not selfish,
Yeah,
I think.
I like how they're unselfish in the wide receiver room.
Which points to what were they before?
Yeah, they were selfish before. Okay, well, that element is gone, and I don't know if Gabe Davis was an extraordinarily selfish player. Maybe there was a little bit of the give me the damn ball mentality there, but we certainly know that was a Steph Diggs MO and has always been and will always be. He's a different cat, different breed of competitor, and the talent was undeniable during his time in Buffalo. And Joe Biscaglia, who was on with us last hour, I pointed out, like, look, it's also undeniable that the talent is not what it was last year. But they do buy into this everybody eats mentality where the ball is going to be distributed around these different pieces and around these different pieces who have unique skill sets. And you can play those pieces depending on what your matchup looks like and hope for the best. And you've got a little bit of versatility there where before you had a star wide receiver and everybody else.
The exact quote here, I like where the unselfishness is for that position.
Yeah, it's a dig. No pun.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, well, see, sometimes you got to restrain yourself because maybe he didn't mean that intentionally. Guess what's going to happen in the week leading up to the Houston Texans game?
Yeah, that'll be a soundbite. Yeah. That'll be bulletin board material.
Yeah, and I think we know Diggs. You don't think Diggs is going to be like when he sees that and reads that?
Well, even yesterday's quote from Josh Allen, do you miss Stephon Diggs? I don't know that I would say I miss him. And then he kind of steps back and says, well, hard not to miss him when you talk about the production. So, yeah, he's going to miss the production. He's going to miss the connection on the field. But off the field, yeah, no, I can't say I really miss him. He doesn't miss him. He likes it better what he has now, which from a talent standpoint isn't what it was last year, but you have harmony, and you have a good group of guys who you hope can get open and make some big plays for this offense.
Honestly, you are not going to replace that production, okay? For anybody that says...
Not one guy is going to replace that production.
No. And not two guys or not three. But what can happen here is, and again, this is the unknown thing, and just liken it to your own work situation, right? If somebody leaves and now you're in a position of leadership, the idea that Josh Allen sort of had to defer to the guy who was established in this league and came to Buffalo and brought that cachet. Josh Allen was still the kid who hadn't won a playoff game. It's a fact.
Yeah.
When Diggs came in. So Diggs was the alpha. The alpha means there can only be one. So when Josh Allen is speaking, yes, it can be true that you're going to miss that production, but can the offense actually be better knowing that this is Josh Allen and he can go through his reads and he doesn't have to worry about Diggs being fed?
It's funny as we're going through our notes and listening to older shows from training camp and reviewing some of our conversations that we had some of the players. I think Von Miller's answer to Josh Allen being more vocal this year was interesting. It was really like, I don't really see or hear him as being more vocal. I see or hear him as being Josh. He is who he is. He's always been this way, and he's going to lead by being Josh. He is the team. Everybody knows he's Captain America in Western New York. He is the city of Buffalo. That and think about what comes with that, Gino. Like if I'm nervous about Josh Allen, of course you're nervous about the decisions he makes on the field and how he plays every Sunday, but that's just a fraction of what this guy is dealing with every day. There's a lot of weight on this guy. At practice, he's signing every autograph because the last thing Josh Allen wants is somebody to say, "Oh, that wasn't fun. Josh Allen was me. Josh Allen didn't recognize me." Whatever it is, on top of that, he's got to be the quarterback. He's got to be the face of the franchise.
Yeah, you don't want to some kid remembers the day Josh Allen stiffed me.
Yeah.
And if you were out, he did this a few days where, all right, I don't have time to do the autographs, but I'm gonna run down Growney Stadium, the railing, and give as many kids a high five as I can.
Right.
So
and that's just, again, like the overall scope of all that guy has to do to remain who he is a tough job, man. That is a really, really challenging thing.
That is the quarterback position,
yes,
Danger.
It is. I get it. But what remains to be seen is that we see what he does off the field, and I think off the field everybody loves Josh. Hard not to love the persona. He's friendly. He's personable. He'll have some fun with you. We want to see the performance on the field, and we hope that what we see on the field, gets them to where they want to be. I'm just saying that, like, the amount of pressure going into this season, if there's pressure on anybody this season, I think it's on more so on Josh than on anybody else on that team.
Who's got the most pressure on them?
I think it's Josh Allen. I think it's 100% Josh Allen. I don't even think it's really that close. They've basically paved the way. This is your team. Now it's your team. If there was friction between he and Diggs, let's say, and friction to the point where Diggs is out, and you replace Diggs with the guys that you brought, the Mac Hollins and the Curtis Samuels of the world, you better hope it works. You better hope it works, because Brandon Beane invested a first-round draft pick on a talent. Yes, he was a challenge to manage, but talented. A talent unlike what we've seen in a long time around these parts.
I would say this. If they miss the postseason, then something's gone terribly wrong if everybody is healthy on this team. So let's just kind of nod and say they're a postseason team. The most pressure in my mind, and I hear what you're saying, and I agree. But that's true of like all quarterbacks. There's going to be a different degree of pressure. It's McDermott. I'm sorry. Like, you have had your team in positions to win playoff games, and the last 3 losses have been some varying degree of spectacular. 1 is an all-timer. 2 Well, you weren't exactly prepared on defense against Cincinnati, and I don't know what about your quarterback, and maybe that's to your point on Josh. And then last year we can kind of revisit it. Until the Bills actually win games when it matters most, we're going to be looking at the coach. And you could say, well, Gene, hey, he's here. I get that. But we're doing the blame assessment. To me, it's still Sean McDermott.
866-4326 is our phone number. You can pull up a stool and join us here in the Sports Bar, 585-866-4FAN. We're also on X. That's Elon's Twitter, @TheFanRochester. One of our regulars, Peter, pointing out Sean McDermott treating the wide receiver room like Billy Bean on Moneyball. It's a great point, Peter.
Yeah.
What they're looking for out of this crew is a high catch rate. Can you catch and secure the football? Because we saw at times last year that was an issue. Whether you're talking about James Cook, whether you're talking about Gabe Davis, Steph Diggs didn't make a catch when you needed him to make a catch at the most important time of the season. You hope that these guys are better at securing the football. That's your job as a receiver. And if you're talking about the Moneyball analogy, yeah, we want guys who can get on base. We want guys who will get on base to help us score more runs.
Yeah, that's the potential. Like, where could it actually go wrong? Well, what if these guys are nothing more than the 2024 version of who was on that? Zay Jones, Robert Foster, the first year.
Yeah.
What'd you call them? Slappies?
A bunch of slappies. Yeah, it's just a bunch of slappies. I mean, no disrespect to the guys that are out there earning a living playing professional football, but let's face it. I mean, the early infancy of what this era of Bills football was, Robert Foster is going to be one hell of a trivia question.
Well, who was the guy that was from the CFL? He was the leading receiver in the Houston playoff.
Duke Johnson?
Duke Johnson?
No, not Duke Johnson. Duke Williams. Duke Williams. Duke Johnson's the running back. Yeah, Duke Williams. Duke Williams who couldn't secure, another guy that couldn't catch the ball at the time where you needed him to make that play. He just couldn't do it against Houston. Again, sad day in the Sports Bar because we hate to see training camp leave. We never wish our time away, and man, it's a privilege to be out there and to have the access that we have and to share it with all of you who are passionate about this team, passionate about our community. We can't do it alone. Gino and I are out there, and we've got a great support staff that help us out for the 2.5 weeks that we're at St. John Fisher University. We got to start with Derek the Pizza Dude, right? Not only
literally brought pizza today.
He was the pizza dude today. Oh, God, it was so good, too.
Hit the spot.
But they're early every morning, getting us set up, making sure that everything is going to be tip-top for the day and everything that we have coming up. We got to thank the Bills staff for providing us with our guests throughout the course of training camp. I mean, we got to talk to freaking Von Miller this year at camp. We got to meet Connor McGovern, which was fantastic. Learn more about KJ Hamler and his journey to the Buffalo Bills. There were so many great moments that we were able to capture and share from talking to some of the players, some of the key players. Talking to Brandon Beane is always a treat, which we were able to do.
Yeah, and certainly our support staff, Max doing a fine job going out there. We had an intern this year, and our guy learned a lot.
Zach.
Zach was doing it here too, and certainly everybody that was out there, you the listeners too. The couple came up today. One, he's kind of a regular in Sports Bar. You were on CMF at the time. Yacht Rock John was there.
Oh, yeah, that's our guy, Captain Obvious from Yacht Club.
Yeah, so he and Christine were hanging out with them before, and they're going to be doing the show for Spazzano and Sandy. He's telling me about that.
Yeah.
So good to see that. Also met Nate. Nate was wearing a T-shirt that had just the Buffalo Bills, the Josh Allen, what does the Bills logo look like? And he's like, hey, I listen to you guys every day. Like, Nate, we appreciate you. So appreciate people that were flagging us down at camp. And yeah, I mean, if you listen to our show, well, chances are you're from Rochester, you have some sort of connection, and I love what that does for our town, the Buffalo Bills, when they come in. It's a bittersweet day, for sure.
Big thank you to our sponsors as well. Buffalo Bills training camp coverage on The Fan brought to you by Ace Swim and Leisure, Chili Ave and Ridge Road in Webster, aceswim.com. Maddie's Motorsports, getting involved with locations in Farmington, Spencerport, and Dansville. Maddie'sMotorsports.com. Again, it takes all of us to make this happen, and it's a great thing that comes to our community every year. I think a lot of people enjoy it, and we enjoy sharing our thoughts, our observations, and our access with you here on The Fan Rochester. Let's get to a round of shots next. What do you say?
Yeah, there are things happening today, namely, again, the United States men's basketball team. That's what you're going to see on your feed tonight. It was ugly for a big part of the game, and the guys woke up 95-91, ended up being the final. Which team in professional sports fired their coach or manager today?
Oh, but is this a trick question? Because I think everybody that follows sports closely enough could probably put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, we'll tell you about that. Baseball has picked another unique locale to this stage, a one-and-done game. This one, I'm curious what this is actually going to look like. Oh, and the 49ers signing a veteran wide receiver, the Brandon Ayuk thing. We haven't even gotten into this.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, this is one of our favorites retiring from the NFL today.
Okay. That's all coming up with a round of shots. Don't forget about last call. You can pull up a stool and have the final say in the sports bar. 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326.
Rochester Sports Update.
St. John Fisher University portion of Bills camp, that's broken. The Bills are back in Buffalo. Josh Allen and the starters will see about a quarter worth of action, and the Bills take on the Bears on Saturday. Head coach Sean McDermott wants to see more out of his special teams.
You know, opportunities that we can in preseason for both Sam and T-Bass will be important for us. So, I mean, you may see on some fourth downs, I decided not to go for it where I normally would, just to continue to get those guys valuable reps and time on task. And so I've been overall very pleased with the day-to-day effort.
Bills and Bears, 1 o'clock kickoff. Our coverage Saturday will begin at 11 a.m. here on the Fan Rochester. U.S. men's basketball. Whoa, they overcome a 17-point deficit, 95-91. The U.S. beat Serbia. They'll now face France in the final. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, the Fan Rochester.
Got a smart speaker at home? Listen to the sports leader, the Fan Rochester at home, by asking it to play 95.7 The Fan.
Back in the sports bar, Danger and Battaglia. Thanks for making us part of your afternoon routine. We appreciate you listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app. And if you're watching on the stream on our YouTube channel at the Fan Rochester, like, subscribe, leave us a little comment, a little wind in the sails. Let's get to a round of shots.
It was only today that the Chicago White Sox got around to firing their manager, Pedro Grifol.
What took so long?
Right. The team announcing they're not going to hire someone full-time until after the season. So Grady Sizemore is the interim guy. Chicago sitting at 28-89. It was only 3 years ago the team won the AL Central. The White Sox return home. Oh, they face the Cubs tomorrow night.
Yeah, boy, if you're a team now facing the White Sox, losing is a pox. You can't lose to that team. Like, they could be the worst team in baseball history. You sweep them. That's every team, the Yankees, the Cubs, any team that plays the White Sox moving forward, sweep them. Don't lose. Don't drop a game to that team.
There's not a lot to like on that team.
Nope.
But Benintendi, the starter from yesterday, that's about, or 2 days ago, maybe that's about it. Give Major League Baseball credit. They come up with unique places to put games. Next year, the Braves and Reds will be playing a regular season game at Bristol Motor Speedway. When Tennessee and Virginia Tech played a college football game there, that was the largest ever, 156,000, largest crowd ever to see a baseball game. 115,000. That was between the Red Sox and Dodgers, an exhibition back in 2008 at the LA Coliseum. There's a chance that record is going to fall. The game is going to be in August of next year.
Is that what they're hoping for here, is to set some sort of Major League Baseball attendance record? I don't understand the need to take it to Bristol Motor Speedway unless that's your plan.
Yeah, I mean, the late Tom George called it racing in a cul-de-sac. Like Bristol Motor Speedway, if you haven't seen it, it's just this massive grandstand, and the track is really short, but a really short track is still lots of room for a football. I'm trying to figure out, okay, how are you going to configure an actual diamond and outfield and everything else there?
We have these conversations, and all I think about being from Rochester is the time the women's team was here. It wasn't the women's. Was it the women's national team? No, or was it the Flash?
No, it was I know what you're talking about.
It was at Frontier Field, but the field wasn't the proper size.
So for everybody that loves soccer way back in the day, I remember the Rhinos were at Frontier Field, and well, the Flash, to their credit, were like, let's try something else. They did it as a promotion, and maybe it was a promotion, maybe it was like, hey, city, we can negotiate with the county. Except the Red Wings or whoever it was, they wouldn't let them use the infield, so they were forced the Flash to play in the outfield.
That's what it was. That's right.
It wasn't a regular pitch.
Yeah.
Like it was short.
It wasn't regulation.
And that drew the ire of everyone in the side. It made us actually look bad.
Yeah, it really did. I remember thinking at that point, well, this has been fun, but I don't know that professional soccer players are going to view our community the way they used to.
Yeah, and a fun fact, too. Like, there was an Aquinas-McQuaid football game. Like, why don't they do that more often? Well, because they lied. The field was 99 yards.
Yeah.
They can't get a 100-yard field.
That's right.
Yeah, they just fudged.
Right. Hey, look, we love Innovative Field. It's a great place for a ball game, and for years it was a great place to watch the Rochester Rhinos, but you used the entire field when the Rhinos played there. You didn't just use the outfield.
Right. So if you're the Yankees or somebody else, you can just kind of cart in a field. Like, we don't have that sort of budget here. Thursday, February 27th, Mike Danger, the Buffalo Sabres will be playing the Hartford Whalers. Well, it's actually the Carolina Hurricanes masquerading. They'll be wearing the old Whaler uniforms.
Miss those unis.
Great
logo, too, by the way.
Elite logo.
With the H in the middle of the W that looks like
There's a lot to like about
chef's
that
kiss. It's a great logo.
franchise, and the brass bonanza, too.
Playing in the mall.
Yes.
Playing in a mall. Yeah. When malls were at their peak, you could go to the mall and watch a hockey game. My kids will never know that joy, that satisfaction.
Nope. So the mall's gone. The Whalers are gone, too. 49ers have signed a veteran wide receiver, Robbie Chosen, formerly Robbie Anderson, since 2016. 30 touchdowns, over 5,000 yards. He's now 31 as looks at watch. Oh, we're still waiting on a trade for Brandon Ayuk.
I love this. So why hasn't this happened yet? It seems like all week long there's been a report here, a report there, people questioning the sources of this report. We've got a media feud happening in Boston right now between somebody we've had on the show, Mike Reese, and one of the local radio guys there, wondering why these reports are coming out the way they're coming out and who's feeding the reports from who. And at the end of it all, Ayuk is still a 49er. And why is that? When you hear some of these reports that say, hey, everything is in line. The Niners, are getting what they want in compensation for Brandon Ayuk. So what's left? What's left, Gino, you know it and I know it, is a player who wants a dollar figure that no team is willing to give him.
This is the bitter pill. And you got to swallow it. You got to figure out this is my read on this. I don't know 100% for sure, of course. It's just bad representation. Brandon Ayuk getting bad advice because, hey, no team is going to trade for him unless you get a new contract. But here's your contract offer. Oh, that's not what I want. Don't you know I'm a top 15 wide receiver in the league? I need to be here. This is what we're willing to pay.
That's
so this, do you blame this on the agent? I do. I think this is the agent giving his client, or not having the honest conversation. Like, hey, it's one thing to request a contract from the Niners, but you can ball out and we'll make that money on the open market next year.
Draw my experience of representing professional athletes from all the times that I've watched Jerry Maguire. You want to have that honest conversation. You should have a relationship with your client to the point where you can say, hey, man, this is as good as it's going to get for you now. If you don't like the long-term solution here, then let's tough it out here, ball out, and then get your money.
So could the unthinkable happen? Because you did have CMC call him a former teammate. Does Ayuk go with his tail between his legs and go back to the Niners?
I mean, he's still a Niner as of right now.
Correct.
I think he's done, not just because CMC slipped, but I think also Shanahan is tired of this. It's a distraction at this point. He doesn't want it anymore. We're done. If you don't want to be here, and we've made you an offer, and it's not good enough for you, we can get something in return. We will get that thing in return eventually. Now it's on you. You just have to, like you said, swallow your pride and admit, okay, maybe I'm not a $30 million a year guy. Can I be satisfied and at peace with being a top 20 receiver in the NFL, making $20 million, $25 million? That's, I think, what you're right. I think that's what's holding up a final deal here with Ayuk.
Yeah. Congratulations to Nick Foles, who called it a career today.
BDN!
He'll officially retire from the NFL as an Eagle. The Phillies will play on September 16th, the home opener against the Falcons. 11 years in the league, 1 Super Bowl ring, and the aforementioned legendary nickname.
BDN. The big debate on Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio today, Gene. Do you retire number 9?
No. You don't really?
I think you do.
No, get out of here.
I think you do.
Get out of here.
I think you do.
One title, get out.
You've got a statue of Nick Foles in the Philly special outside the stadium.
And that feels right.
Retire the number.
No, you don't retire Nick Foles. Nick Foles is you retire Hall of Famers.
BDN. Okay, let's be proper here. There's more to it than just his play on the field. This is BDN we're talking about here. You retire number 9.
Finally, it's that time of year again. Changing gears. Next week, it's going to be the Little League World Series in the West Regional. A team from Southern Cal will be facing the 12 and under team from Maui. And yeah, you remember what Maui's been going through in the last year. One of the players in this team and his family lost everything, but that's not from the terrible wildfire from last year. That was from a wildfire 6 years ago. The whole island's rallying around this team right now. This game is going to be 3 o'clock Sunday on ESPN.
Does that get your attention when it's on? Do you watch any of the Little League World Series?
You know, it was really fun when my son was at that age and we'd be watching together. And we actually went to the Little League right in Williamsport. You can go on the tour and everything.
Yeah.
And they make it an interactive experience.
I drive through Williamsport every year when we go down to Florida, and every year I see the Little League World Series and I see the fields and everything, and I'm always like, I never carve out time to say like, hey, let's go check it out, because it's never really been something I feel like I need to check off my sports bucket list.
Yeah.
And every now and then, if I, where's this team from? Like, I want to know where the team is from. That's what I care about more than anything. So a team from Hawaii with something to play for, that might actually get my attention.
That will be a big story. Yeah, my takeaway from that, and you don't realize this watching on TV, you hear how TV kind of distorts everything. When you're down on the field and that hill that is behind there, and you realize, wow, this is actually a much bigger stadium if you have all these people on the hill there.
Yeah.
And you realize these kids are 12. Part of me feels guilty that there's so much coverage for these 12-year-olds, and if somebody makes it, that's how I kind of view it.
It's heartbreaking if you're the pitcher that gives up the game-winning dong in a tight game, right? Like, to see the kids, the emotion from the kids is heartbreaking. You hate that is happening to a national audience on ESPN. That's tough, but I also imagine that's an experience. That's something that you learn from. That's something that's a memory that no one can take away from you. Win or lose,
you're there.
You're there. You made it, and you have that to learn from and to grow from. It normally only catches my attention if I know where the team is from, and it's a region or a town. I'm like, let me see how they go. New York had a team a couple of years ago in there, right? From down in Binghamton, I want to say.
That's right. Yeah. Peter is saying, yes, it was from Endicott. You should know
Endicott,
that.
right. That's right. I'm sorry, Pete. Endicott was there, yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that one as well. We're going to take a break and come back. It's time for last call at 866-4326. We'll let you know who's stopping by the sports bar tomorrow afternoon as well. Next on The Fan.
You're listening to Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Man, it's been such a busy afternoon. I think we only grazed the idea that we've got somewhat meaningful football happening tonight.
Yeah, we've got one game on the NFL Network. We've got Carolina without Bryce Young taking on New England. Do we see Drake May tonight?
We see Drake May tonight.
Yeah.
We see.
We're going to see how
struggling.
We see
Drake May tonight, yes.
We also got the Lions and Giants tonight, but I don't see anywhere that would be on local television.
I imagine if I know my NFL Network the way I think I do, that the game that isn't on NFL Network will probably be on tape delay after the Patriots-Panthers
I would
game.
think if you're a Giant fan, you look at the schedule there, and it's going to pop up because every preseason game they will replay it at some point. Tomorrow night, you've got Falcons, Dolphins, Texans, Steelers, Eagles, and Ravens.
I'm not betting the preseason. There, I said it.
Good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I can't do it.
There are other
I mean, I
things
know
you
I
can-
could bet the Ravens because they never lose in the preseason. They're ridiculous, but I'm going to refrain. I'll wait until the real thing come week one.
Which the Ravens are actually an underdog at home to Philadelphia. It's Philly -1. That, like PJ said earlier this week, that smells, right?
Yeah. It's again though. It's the preseason. Throw everything out the window because you don't know who's going to play, how long they're going to play. You know what they're going to try out. The play calling is all messed up.
Even the Bills, they're favored only by 1.5. If that's a regular season game against the Bears, the Bills are a touchdown favorite.
I think so. Yep. We'll preview that Saturday afternoon kickoff. More so tomorrow, our final day before we get to some Buffalo Bills action, preseason action coming up on Saturday with kickoff at 1:00 here on the Fan Rochester. And we'll do our best to kind of put a bow on the last 2.5 weeks worth of practices at St. John Fisher University. It's been a treat.
Yeah,
an absolute delight.
Appreciate everybody writing in. Tony writing in to me personally, thanking us for the coverage. I'm like, Tony, that is our privilege, buddy.
No question. Yeah, we love doing this. It's an absolute treat. And if you spend any part of your afternoon with us, we don't take that lightly. We know how many options you have for sports information and entertainment. Your time is your most valuable and precious commodity. So you're giving us something, and hopefully we're giving you something in return. Thank you for listening throughout the course of training camp here in Rochester at St. John Fisher University. So we're back tomorrow starting at 3 o'clock. We'll get you ready for Saturday afternoon's preseason opener against the Bears. If you missed Joe Biscaglia, if you missed Jenna Cottrell, search us out wherever you find your podcasts. Just look for the Sports Bar, and you'll find all of our guest appearances there. JR Sport Brief next on The Fan.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. 95.7 950, The Fan, Rochester.